The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item on the agenda is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of May 17, 2018 meeting. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with the Massachusetts Port Authority for the use of EDIC-owned sidewalks and for the installation of sidewalk decals for the cruise passenger wayfinding program within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Massport's Flynn Cruise Port Boston will see over 160 cruise ships this season, with more than 300,000 people visiting Boston. Cruise ship activity in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park has increased greatly in recent years, resulting in substantial parking revenue that supports BPDA activities. Through a one-year license agreement in 2017, Massport initiated a pilot wayfinding program consisting of adhesive decals on area sidewalks to direct passengers from the cruise terminal to area attractions. Due to the success of last year's program, Massport would like to extend the program for an additional 5 years. The proposed wayfinding system also integrates into a larger pedestrian wayfinding system for all the South Boston waterfront, promoted through the South Boston Waterfront Sustainable Transportation Plan of 2015. Massport will be solely responsible for all facets of the installation and maintenance of these decals, and it is asked that the license extend through the end of the 2023 season. Because of the economic activity created by the cruise ship activity in support of BPDA activities, it is the staff's recommendation that any license fee be waived. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that the members of the board might have.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from the board?
Is there a reason that we're going with 5-year decals rather than something more permanent?
That is an excellent question. This is Massport's request. I think that 5 years in the decals will give us sufficient flexibility should the needs change, but this is, to be very blunt, this would be an interim measure. It has worked very successfully last year through the maze of streets in the park. It can be a little bit intimidating to people from out of town, so we're asking for 5 years.
Okay, if there's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Ed. Item number 3, request approval for the Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston's fiscal year 2019 operating budget and to take all related actions. Teresa.
Good afternoon. As Acting Director of Finance, I wanted to take a moment to thank and congratulate the entire Finance Division for the hard work on the fiscal year 19 budget. Since serving as the Acting Director, I've had the opportunity to work more closely with the finance staff. They are the quiet, behind-the-scene team that works hard every day and produces quality work every time. I wanted to take a moment before the budget presentation to make sure that you understand and appreciate all of their hard work, not just during the budget season, but all year long. A special thank you to Bob and Michelle for leading this fabulous team. And now I'd like to introduce Michelle to further the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary. I am Michelle Goldberg, the Budget and Procurement Manager. It is my pleasure to present to you the FY19 operating and capital budget. Today, we are seeking your approval on a plan that advances our efforts to focus on long-term planning, enhance transparency, and to support the core work of the Boston Planning and Development Agency. In the audience today are members of the Budget and Finance team who are here in support of the budget, which is a reflection of their talent, hard work, and dedication to this organization. I would like to thank them and the many folks across the BPDA that have contributed to this annual document. I want to acknowledge the commitment and stewardship of Bob Luisi, our controller. Thank you for all your support and hard work. We have provided the board with a draft version of the budget book, which we intend to release soon after your approval. We will be sure to announce when the FY19 budget book has been formatted by our graphics team and is available to the public. In the meantime, we encourage those who are interested to go to our website to view the FY18 budget. With that, I would like to walk you through a few slides that help to summarize what is behind the bottom line number we are seeking your approval on. When it comes to the process for this year's budget, FY19 is guided by the same goals we have been pursuing throughout our multi-year effort to improve financial practices. To increase organization, transparency, and the level of detail in the BPDA budget, we are working to further refine our coding practices, reporting capabilities, and tracking systems. The BPDA budget book is institutionalizing this work in a new way for the organization and the public. By building out a more detailed capital planning process to support long-term cash management, the BPDA is able to confidently fund its long-term liabilities, such as other post-employment benefits for our retired employees. FY19 is the first year that our request for approval includes a vote on a comprehensive capital budget. The BPDA always monitored capital spending, but board approval was done incrementally as projects sought procurement approval. Today, we are able to present the board with a detailed plan for capital spending in the next fiscal year that also includes enough flexibility to respond to the evolving nature of capital project management. A special thank you to Enrico Romoli, Dylan Darcy, as well as Paul Osborne and Dolores Fazio from Real Estate for their work on the capital budget. They have really helped to move the needle in this effort. The BPDA is also mitigating the impact of rising healthcare costs by remaining self-insured for EDIC health insurance, partially self-insured. By leveraging our technology and collaborating with our administrative departments, we are better able to support department heads in their effort to make data-driven decisions. These accomplishments would not be possible without the diligent work of the accounting team, the budget and AP team, the financial compliance team, the human resources team, and other stakeholders across the agency. When looking at the FY19 budget, it is important to keep in mind our complex structure. The BPDA is made up of 3 corporations and 2 501c3s. Our audits must separate these, but the plan that guides our management decisions as an organization must take into account all 5 entities. That is why we present our budget from a combined point of view. These pie charts reflect the proportion of sources and uses across those 5 entities. Rental, leases, and parking is the BPDA's largest source of revenue at 62%. The second largest source of revenue is grants and donations. This category includes funding for the Office of Workforce Development and the intercompany grant from EDIC to the BRA. The grants and donations revenue for OWD mainly funds economic development programming, which is a contractual service expense, and the BRA's intercompany grant revenue, which funds contractual expenses from all of our entities. So by and large, there is a close relationship between the grants and donations category, which is 28% of revenue, and the contractual services category, which is 30% of overall BPDA spending. The next largest group of expenses are personnel at 34% and benefits at 16%, which is a combined 50% of agency spending overall. We always like to remind folks that if you take out the OWD contractual services spending and the intercompany grant, personnel and benefits is 80% of the remaining spending, which goes to show how important staffing decisions and benefit management is for the BPDA. The pie chart shows you the proportions of each category in this budget. The next table helps to explain the relationship between actual dollars and budgets over time. When building budgets, we look at actual performance and projections to make decisions for the future. We also look at past budgets to assess how much actual performance to carry into our future years and how our plan is changing over time. You can see in this table that the FY19 budgeted surplus of around $1 million is well below the actual results of FY17 and lower than the FY18 projections, yet an increased budgeted surplus as compared to the FY18 budget. In FY17, we had an early payment of the Zoom lease, which resulted in a lump sum payment rather than installments over time. In FY18, we are seeing a variety of favorable items in revenue that we have discussed during quarterly updates, such as a collection of unanticipated one-time lease transactions and better than expected parking revenue due to the addition of new parking lot locations. One-time items in actual revenue, like early lease payments, are not taken into consideration in the FY19 budget, but sustainable variances are considered, such as favorable parking revenue trends. Overall, in FY19, total budgeted revenue is declining slightly from FY18. Even with this decline in revenue, the bottom line budgeted surplus is increasing due to a relatively larger decline in overall expenses. This increase in budgeted surplus is due in part to the BPDA's completion of capital work at the China Trade Building, which is now ready for full occupancy. The full occupancy of the China Trade Building means two things: increased revenue due to leases taking effect, and a reduction in the need for an intercompany grant as a contractual expense and as the construction work concludes. Smaller revenue items are included in the FY19 budget, such as a handful of known one-time sale of real estate transactions and adjustments for market trends and equity participation activity. The second key consideration in building the FY19 revenue budget is the continued decline in federal, state, and donation funding for the Office of Workforce Development. Some costs are declining with it, but it is not a one-for-one reduction, and the OWD deficit remains. EDIC has continued its support of the critical economic development work of OWD and has sustained its commitment to fund the OWD operational deficit. Earlier, I mentioned that personnel and benefits is 50% of the BPDA's expenses, and we are planning for modest increases in this category, which is partially offset by a few notable cost savings, namely our liabilities for post-retirement benefits and health insurance, which are declining due to our strategic decisions to schedule out OPEB payments and to go partially self-insured. As mentioned before, our China Trade Building is ready to be occupied and construction spending is tapering off, so the contractual services category is declining because of the reduction in the intercompany grant. But that does create an uptick in property management expenses because the building will now consume more electricity, more water, and require more security and upkeep. Another important item in the contractual services category is the funding for planning studies. In FY17, the Boston 2030 initiative concluded, and the BPDA spent FY18 reviewing the results and sorting through priorities. The FY19 budget includes funding for several planning studies across the city, including East Boston, downtown, Allston-Brighton, and Mattapan. Outside of these items, we are planning for a relatively similar performance in revenue and expenses. In slide 8, it shows our staffing by department, which is driving our personnel expenses. As mentioned in our FY18 quarterly updates, we have seen several vacancies as a result of attrition. We are continuing to leverage opportunities to reorganize and rethink when and where we fund positions. For example, our planning department has been the focus of our staffing strategy in recent years. And we'll go into FY19 with 11 vacancies. 6 of those vacancies are for existing positions that need to be backfilled, but the BPDA is also investing in positions for transportation planners, urban design planners, and community engagement planners to support the work of the scheduled plans that we are funding in FY19. Overall, our headcount is expectations for FY19 are in line with what we had planned in FY17 and are a net increase of 6 additional positions from the FY18 budget. And now we can turn to our capital plans. As mentioned before, your vote today will include approval of a strategic capital plan that invests in business process improvement software and repairs to critical assets that sustain the work of the agency. Our budget book provides a comprehensive narrative that describes all the specific projects that this table summarizes. You can see that the China trade project spending is winding down, as reflected in the decline in the intercompany grant that we talked about over in our operations budget. With that project wrapping up, we plan to shift our focus to the garage and the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park, which is in need of repair. The garage generates roughly $5 million in revenue each year for the BPDA. So by investing in the garage, the BPDA will be able to capture sustainable revenue to address some of our future needs, such as our long list of capital needs. Also, we will be continuing projects that are funded by the City of Boston, and we are always grateful for that collaboration. In conclusion, I would like to thank the board for their ongoing support, and we look forward to your questions and feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
I just want to make one comment. I do, listening to your presentation, Michelle, and that I know Bob and the whole team put a lot of work into. I remember this moment at Priscilla's and my confirmation hearing in City Council chambers, where a city councilor expressed a great deal of frustration at never being able to see the BPDA budget and having no understanding of what we were spending or what we were doing. And so to sit here today and hear you go through so competently our revenues and our expenses and have projections, it just is very clear how far we have come, and it's a great deal of credit to the Finance and Administration Department for bringing us on this journey. And it's a quiet success. You know, you're not going to show up in the Globe, and I don't think anyone in City Council will even notice that we have this really great budget, but maybe they will. But I think it's really we've moved leaps and bounds forward, and so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I know this is maybe not be the, like you said, the most glamorous, but this is always my favorite part, right? Because this is my world, right? I know decks, I know budgets, I know accounting, I know all of this stuff. This is awesome. Like, it takes a lot of hard work and skill to be clear and concise and to deliver data with clarity and transparency. And so congratulations to you and the team. I guess my one question is on the head count. While yes, revenues and you know, and our properties are, you know, assets and stuff, I think this organization's biggest assets are its people. And so that's always my biggest concern, if from a headcount perspective, you know, are we doing enough to recruit and retain? We have very highly talented people, but we ask them to do a lot with a little. So I do like to see that we are, you know, investing in training and the appropriate, you know, COLA and merit increases and things like that. And maybe this is a HR personnel question like later is, you know, are we competitive enough, right? And are we doing enough to kind of like, you know, compensate like and you know, retain our talent?
Sure. It's a timely question. Moran is here to,
Okay.
but it is something that I think we think about very strategically, and we have several items in our budget where we're thinking about employee engagement and supporting training and professional development, but
Thank you, Priscilla. Yeah, your question is very valid, right? How do we retain and retain our top talent, retain our talent, right? Are we competitive with the market? What I will be presenting after this is we have done a 3-year compensation study with consultants from Marsh & McLennan, and we'll be presenting a revised compensation structure that really benchmarks not only each department into, you know, what's out there in the market, as well as individual jobs, and also room for growth as people move up in their roles. Okay.
Okay, good. That's it.
Okay, If there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 4 is personnel. Moran?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary. We have a few items for your consideration for the EDIC agenda. We have 2 appointments, Omar Webb in MIS and Mudge Undermeyer and Senior Planner 1. Omar to start on this, June 18th and Undermeyer to start on July 16th. We have 12 employee service contractors. Jamal Crawford from Planning, Kimberly Lucas, Claire Shepard, Ada Pantoja, Sabrina Nunez, Joe Amarella, and Joanne Evans from OWD, Sherry Lee from Finance, Ryan Fernandez from Compliance, Olivia Roos from MIS, and Lisa Harrington and Nicole Pryor from the General Counsel. And that's for your consideration. We also have 1 travel item for your consideration. That's Lene Banks from our HR office. And before I go into the compensation structure policy, I do want to let you know that for your consideration, Michael Christopher and Sarah Myerson were requesting approval for acting directors for them to sign during the absence of the director and executive secretary between pretty much next week's June 18th through the 22nd. All right.
What was that last item? Can you explain that? What was that last item again?
Sure. We're requesting your approval to have them sign as acting director. No? Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So for the compensation, we've done an updated and revised compensation structure. We've done a 3-year study, like I said, with Marston McLennan. And what the study showed is it allowed us to benchmark outside, and it's a living document, so it will be continuously benchmarked, aged every year. We're looking for any opportunities if we're struggling with recruitment or attrition. We will always be looking at it. So, again, for your consideration, our revised compensation structure, which is in your board memo. Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moran. Item number 5, I need a motion to adjourn the EDIC meeting.
I move we adjourn the EDIC meeting.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of May 17, 2018 meeting. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on July 12th, 2018 at 5:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director regarding the application for Trinity Orient Heights Phase 2 Limited Partnership Chapter 121A project. Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, Board of Appeal. Jeff, any changes or additions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No additions or changes. There are 64 petitions for your consideration for transmittal to the Board of Appeal for this month.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Jeff. Item number 4, request authorization to extend the South Boston Interim Planning Overlay District for 1 year to complete the planning and rezoning process. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary. As you may recall, last June, we were before this board to ask to recommend to the Boston Zoning Commission that an interim planning overlay district be adopted for essentially what was the residential area of South Boston. That iPod was in effect for 1 year. It is due to expire next month. Although we have had conversations with elected officials and civic groups about the zoning that is now in place, we do need additional time. So what we're asking right now is just for an extension of 1 year, and this is scheduled to go before the Zoning Commission next month.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any questions from the board?
Do you have any observations coming out of the first year of this iPod?
Yeah, there were a couple of that dealt with dimensions specifically, whether it's FAR or height. There were some issues along West Broadway that were specifically mentioned. So those are things that we still have to tweak out right now. It wasn't so much about uses, but it was about dimensions.
Great, thank you.
There's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Item number 5, request authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt a text amendment to the Boston Zoning Code to increase the housing exaction and jobs contribution to $9.03 per square foot and $1.78 per square foot respectively. Sanel.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. Development Impact Project exactions, more commonly known as linkage, leverages large-scale development to create affordable housing and job training opportunities for our residents across the city. As you may know, linkage applies to projects seeking zoning relief that are over 100,000 square feet and meet the definition of a DIP project, such as office, retail, not residential, office, retail, institutional, or hotel. Currently, for every square foot of development that this board approves over 100,000 square feet, that's a DIP project, $8.34 per square foot goes towards a neighborhood housing trust, and $1.34 goes towards housing, towards jobs. Sorry, what did I do? So a little bit of a history on linkage. Linkage was created in 1983 with an initial fee of $5 per square foot for housing. In 1986, linkage was, the jobs linkage was added for $1 per square foot for jobs. Interestingly enough, Boston is the only city in the country that has jobs linkage, even today. In 1987, Boston was given the legal authority to require linkage and adjust the fee for inflation, or CPI, every 36 months. Linkage was incorporated into our zoning code in 1996 and was first adjusted in 2000 to $5.49 for housing and $1.09 for jobs. Linkage adjustments are not automatic, so since 2000, despite having the authority to adjust linkage by CPI every 3 years, linkage has only been adjusted 3 times. Since the beginning of the program, over $168 million has been collected for housing, and over $38 million has been collected for jobs, for a total of over $200 million. Since 2014, over $40 million in housing linkage has leveraged a total of $562 million in public funds in 39 developments that cost $837 million in total. These projects have created 1,268 affordable units and preserved over 500 existing affordable units. Some recent projects that have benefited from linkage funds include 132 Chestnut Hill Avenue in Brighton, a 61-unit affordable senior housing project built on BPDA land, 48 Boylston Street in downtown Boston, a 46-unit housing project that will house the formerly homeless, and the residences in Brighton Marine at 1465 Commonwealth Avenue in Brighton that will provide 102 affordable units with a preference for veterans. In terms of housing linkage, over $9 million has been collected since 2014, which has helped more than 2,300 low and moderate income residents access job training and education programs. The mayor's tuition-free college program that was just launched very recently is fully funded through this program, as are training programs in locksmithing and carpentry at the North Bennett Street School and cooking and life skills training at community surveys. As you may see in this chart, The last increase to linkage was in 2013, which gave us an option, the 36-month rule, to adjust linkage in 2016. We opted not to do it at that point. Linkage is not automatic, as I mentioned earlier, and given that the strong development climate in Boston is thriving right now, we believe that this is the right time to ask for an adjustment in linkage. We're asking that the linkage rates be adjusted by 8%, and that is by CPI, to $9.03 for housing and $1.78 for jobs, for a total of $10.81, which is a 8% increase in the linkage rate from what it currently is today. Just a few words on the strong development climate. Office vacancy rates have been declining since 2014 to the current rate of 6.7%, with average rents per square foot at $57.68, with the strongest office markets being the Financial District, Back Bay, and Seaport. Hotel vacancy rates have been increasing since 2015 to 82.4% last year. And this board has approved over 9 million square feet of office space from 2014 to December 2017. We're asking today for your approval to petition the Zoning Commission for a text amendment that will allow for an 8% increase in linkage so that we can continue to support the important goals of providing affordable housing and good quality job training to Boston residents.
Okay, thank you, Sanal. Are there any questions from the board?
Sir, is there any evidence that increasing these fees has had a negative effect on the interest of developers in continuing to build in Boston?
Thank you for that question. So as part of this process, before we came to you today, we actually convened a group of developers, and those who have developments that were recently approved, and those who have developments that are currently or being contemplated. We made sure that we were very transparent in the fact that we're increasing linkage by 8%, and this is by CPI, what we can do without any change in legislation, and they were fully supportive of increasing this rate at this point.
Are there any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Sanal. Item number 6, request authorization to adopt the Smart Utilities Policy for Article 80 Development Review and to incorporate said policy into the BRA Development Review Guidelines. Not Manuel.
Chairman Burke, members of the board, I'm Tad Reed, Deputy Director for Transportation and Infrastructure Planning, and we're very pleased to present to you this evening the Boston Smart Utilities Project, which aims to bring about more coordinated, resilient infrastructure planning in Boston. The keystone of this project is a new pilot policy for Article 80 development that would ask developers to incorporate smart utility technologies into their developments. We've gone to great lengths to craft a policy for Article 80 projects that's reasonable and flexible, with relief valves built into it to ensure that developers are asked to move forward only if there is demonstrated economic feasibility and return on investment. This will be a 2-year pilot with recalibration at the end of 2 years. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Manuel Esquivel to provide you with the details.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Tad. So before we dive into the details of the policy, I want to show a little bit the why of this project. Recent storm events show that we need to be better prepared for flooding events in the city. We also want to be better prepared for potential power outages during weather events. The business as usual way of constructing and maintaining utilities result in repetitive street openings that are very inefficient and disrupt our neighborhoods, the residents, and local businesses. If you look down into one of these street openings, you'll also see a chaos that business as usual way of utility construction has created. There's more that we need to do to solve the transportation problems in the city. And there's also a few pilot projects with smart sensors and smart technologies that are going to give us a lot of good data to deploy smart technologies more widely. But we want to get the city ready so that when we're ready to deploy this technology, we can just plug it in. Also, smart utility infrastructure is contemplated in already adopted plans, citywide plans. Imagine Boston 2030, for example, talks about district energy microgrids to provide resiliency and equity in our neighborhoods. Resilient Boston talks about green infrastructure, also for resiliency, and as an important source of new jobs. So the Boston Smart Utilities vision is an interdepartmental project led by BPDA together with 7 other departments. It includes 7 other departments. It provides a new model for integrated planning and utility construction, the planning, design, construction, maintenance of utilities, and it encourages the deployment of smart utility technologies across 4 sectors: energy, water, transportation, and telecommunications. And the goals are to increase efficiency in the utility construction and maintenance, increase equity by decreasing the cost of utility services to the end customers. We also want to harden our infrastructure against weather events. We want to continue supporting economic development by attracting businesses through world-class services. And we want to continue supporting innovation in the city by integrating cutting-edge technologies into the utility sector. The process has been going on for 2 years, and it can be split into 2, the analysis phase and the policy development phase. All along this process, we have done extensive stakeholder engagement with utilities, with technical experts, with city staff, and very importantly, with developers. We've talked to 18 developers who do business often in the city of Boston. The analysis phase resulted in 2 work products. One's the business as usual report that looks at the baseline of doing construction in the city of Boston in a business as usual manner, and a cost benefit analysis report that looks at the costs and benefits of 10 smart utility technologies in comparison to the baseline. These 2 reports are based on the development area in plan.av, and the cost and benefit analysis looked at 10 smart utility technologies. Now, after this work and through the stakeholder engagement and the work done by the steering committee, there's 2 implementation tools, 2 recommendations. One is the smart utility standards, which is like a mini complete streets, but for the underground. The second one, which is the one we're bringing today before the board for adoption, is the smart utilities policy for Article 80 development review. And this policy looks at 5 of the 10 technologies that were studied during the project. So here are the 10 technologies that were studied, and these are the 5 that are contemplated in the policy. Again, we went down from 10 to 5 using the work products, the analysis that we did, the extensive stakeholder engagement. We took the comments and the feedback from developers. We looked at it very carefully to see what is technically and financially feasible for the city. I'm going to take some time to describe each of these technologies quickly. The first one is district energy microgrid. This is an energy system for clusters of buildings. It generates electricity on site, and it uses the excess heat of that process to provide useful heating and cooling to the buildings in that cluster. It reduces the capital and O&M costs by substituting the boilers and chillers in each individual building, and instead having a more centralized system. During normal operations, it uses fuel. It uses fuel more efficiently, so it provides energy efficiency. But by normal operations, I mean these systems work together with the macrogrid during regular operations. Now, there's also a very important benefit, which is they can provide resiliency when disconnected from the macrogrid, and these systems can disconnect from the macrogrid during storm events or other emergency events. The second technology is green infrastructure. This allows rainwater to percolate into the ground to either infiltrate into the ground or for potential reuse within the development. And this provides resiliency by diverting some of the rainwater during storms away from the water and sewer system. Adaptive signal technology is a set of sensors and traffic signals that communicate with each other to improve traffic flow and safety for all transportation modes. Smart streetlights, this is when you mount smart sensors or smart technology onto traditional light poles. And the telecom utilitor is a set of encased pipes that consolidate the wires and the fiber optics for telecom. This technology can eliminate the need for repetitive street openings in the telecom sector and can reduce barriers of entry. So these are the 5 technologies that are contemplated in the policy. This is a table that summarizes the policy that we're looking to adopt. I'll go over the size thresholds for each of them and a few specifications. The district energy microgrid will apply to developments at 1.5 million square feet or greater, so it's really large developments. The way the policy works is we're asking for a feasibility assessment that will really look at the economic feasibility of these systems to see whether it makes sense to move forward with this system. We will be reviewing that feasibility assessment with an on-call district energy expert on our side. And once the feasibility assessment looks feasible, we'll ask for a master plan where the developer will show the size of the systems, what parts of the development these systems will be included for, and also explain how the system will relate, the phasing of the system will relate to the phasing of the development. The district energy microgrids can be phased in modules. The green infrastructure will apply to developments at 100,000 square feet or greater. And here we're asking to use green infrastructure to increase the amount of rainwater that is collected on site from what's currently required by the Water and Sewer Commission, from 1 inch to 1.25 inches. So this is a 2-part policy: use of green infrastructure to increase the amount of rainwater collected. Adaptive signal technology, that's required of developments installing new traffic signals or making significant improvements to the traffic signals. And there we're asking for the full system and related components. Smart streetlights, similar to adaptive signal technology, will apply to those developments making new installations of light poles or significant improvements to light poles. And there we're asking for to provide extra electrical connections and fiber optics at the light pole. We're not asking for any smart technology or smart sensors yet. DUET is doing a lot of work in reviewing the data for the pilot projects that are undergoing. We just want to get the city ready to be able to plug in when we're ready. And last, the telecom utilitor applies to 1.5 million square feet or greater, or developments constructing roadways of half a mile in length. And then there we're asking to install the full telecommunications utilitor. Just for completion, this is the other tool for implementation of smart utility standards. It's like a mini complete streets for the underground, set of diagrams on how to properly install the infrastructure needed. And a quick note on implementation, Tad alluded to the fact that we're rolling this out as a 2-year pilot. The steering committee will continue to meet and see how the project, to oversee the implementation of the project. At the end of the 2 years, we'll get together and look at the size thresholds and also the technologies that are contemplated in the policy. Through the consultation with developers and the sessions we had with them, there were 2 main items that came up. One is the need for assistance to explore financing and ownership structures for these systems. These systems are common in campus settings, universities, hospitals, military bases. There's a reality of a challenge for the private developer sector. So we want to work to provide some of this work and look into the financing and ownership structures. There was also an ask to look at the assistance in coordination with the utilities. So action items for implementation will create a working group to look into financing and ownership structures, and we'll also convene sessions with utilities and developers as needed. This is the summary of the policy, and now we can take some questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Miller. Any questions from the board?
When would this go into effect?
Immediately after board adoption.
Yes. Also, we have, in anticipation of this policy, we have been working with developers who, over the last 9 months, who we know have projects. For example, we've been working with HYM on the Suffolk Downs project. We've been working on the South End Exchange project. And so there are other projects already in the door, not yet approved, that will be subject to this.
And my understanding is that there have been some studies of campuses and military bases where the application of this technology has proven to be successful. Could we establish some links on our website to some of those studies so that others who are interested in taking a look at this can see what the basis of this kind of intervention is?
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think this is awesome. This is a worthy investment. I know it's difficult to work cross-functionally in any organization, I'm sure government included. So please keep up the great work, and if there's anything that we as a board can do to assist you in that, I would like to see in future memos as you're partnering with developers of certain projects and having them, you know, be contributing to moving this type of investment forward. I would like that to be highlighted because I have an expectation that they are doing that.
And we'd be happy to provide you with regular updates as this progresses.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah, whatever the frequency that needs to be, not too frequent, but frequent enough kind of thing, you know, I'll let you guys decide that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Good job. Item number 7, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for design services for a new park on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Transportation Central Artery Tunnel Project Parcel 2 on the Rose Kennedy Greenway, and to enter into a memorandum of understanding with agreement with Mass DOT. Lauren.
Good afternoon, members of the board, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Polhemus. Today I'm here to request for permission to advertise and issue an RFP for design services for the design of a new park on Central Artery Parcel 2, as well as ask for authorization to enter into an MOA or MOU with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation for the park's design and construction process. This process will be a joint planning effort between the BPDA's Planning Department and MassDOT as part of the Joint Development Protocol originally established during the planning of the Central Artery Tunnel Project. Central Artery Parcel 2, as you can see on the slide here, it's that triangle that's within the yellow circle. It's a 5,000 square foot parcel on the edge of the Bullfinch Triangle. It's bounded by North Washington Street, Beverly Street, and Valenti Way. 3 development projects over the past several years, Related Beals the Beverly, Boston Properties Hub on Causeway, and Limax 88 North Washington Street Hotel Project have all collaboratively or collectively contributed over $600,000 or committed to contributing that much for the design and construction of a park on this parcel. When complete, the park will become part of the Rose Kennedy Greenway and in fact will become its new northern terminus. So we're very excited to finally get this moving.
Okay, thank
you.
you, Lauren. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Item number 8. Request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals to assist in the preparation of the Seaport Transit Strategic Plan. Matthew.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Palmas. Thank you for your time. My name is Matt Moran. I'm a senior transportation planner here with the Boston Planning and Development Agency. I'm joining you today to ask for permission to advertise a request for proposal for the Seaport Transit Strategic Plan. As you are well aware, Boston is currently undergoing the largest development boom in the city's history. Perhaps more than any other neighborhood, the Seaport is seeing the most significant changes to its built environment. These changes bring with them new opportunities, such as office space for the city's important technology companies, residential units for our growing population, and cultural space for some of our great institutions. However, growth in the Seaport has also led to challenges with access, particularly on the transit networks. These transit challenges are being felt in terms of capacity existing services like the Silver Line and BPDA buses and shuttle routes. And also, there are still parts of the city that lack direct access to the seaport, such as commuters coming from North Station. This transit challenge is not going unnoticed either. Our city's transportation staff have been pushed by the community, stakeholders, elected officials, and this very board to come up with solutions for transportation in the seaport. And there have been several recent examples of government agencies and the private sector proposing solutions for ameliorating this situation. Therefore, to respond to this in a coordinated way, we are proposing the Seaport Transit Strategic Plan. The mission of the plan is to study the key transit connections to and within the seaport and recommend projects that can be phased in over both the short term and long term. This analysis will take a deep dive into both key transit proposals currently out there and understand areas that are lacking now. So first, we will update and build upon existing planning efforts, such as the South Boston Waterfront Sustainable Transportation Plan and Go Boston 2030. Next, we will use this analysis to confirm, modify, or deny the validity of these concepts. We will also explore new transit opportunities, such as bus and shuttle connections that currently do not exist. And all this will be done in close collaboration with partner agencies, stakeholders, and the community. It should be noted that BTD will co-manage the study with our agency, and we will work closely with the MBTA on their efforts to analyze Silver Line capacity. The outcome of this study will be an action plan for advancing key transit projects in the Seaport District. This will include a revised understanding of key desire lines, such as the seaport connections to North Station, a priority list of projects and improvements for immediate and long-term implementation with realistic design and funding mechanisms, the creation of a menu of options for city and state agencies to utilize when determining mitigation for development projects, and conceptual planning level designs for key transit improvements. This study is expected to take about 9 months from kickoff and is being funded through development mitigation received through the Seaport Square Notice of Project Change. So thank you for your time and consideration. I would appreciate an affirmative vote for this permission to advertise. Permission to advertise this important transportation study. I'm now available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Are there any questions from the board?
9 months from kickoff means what exactly in terms of when this plan would be delivered?
Sure. So we would, once funding arrives from the developer, we would issue the RFP. That would take about a month and a half. And then we would look for, we come back to this board for an agreement on the chosen consultant, on the staff's recommendation for the consultant, and then that would be when we would kick off the study once the board gives authorization for the selected consultant.
So a year to 14 months, maybe.
I'm sorry?
A year to 14 months, maybe.
That sounds accurate. Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah. I just wanted to confirm. So is this entirely funded from by the developers?
It is.
It is.
Yes.
Okay. So that's my only confirmation.
Do we feel that this study is appropriately timed in relation to the growth? It feels like a lot of the growth has already happened, and why didn't this study happen earlier, I guess is my question.
Sure. So in 2015, there was a South Boston Waterfront Sustainable Transportation Plan. It did a thorough analysis of a lot of land use assumptions and sort of the existing transportation infrastructure that was in the Seaport District. So we're going to build on that study with a particular focus on transit. So there were sort of higher level transit recommendations made in that study. And what we want to do with this is like take a deeper dive into a lot of those recommendations that were made. And then subsequent to that, there was also the Go Boston 2030, which again built off of the previous study, but was sort of more high level in terms of the entire city and even in terms of the region. So I think this will be a much more heavy focus on transit and in a very specific geography.
So it's more of a continuation of work that's already been done?
Exactly.
That's how we're viewing it? Okay.
Yeah. And I guess I would just like to encourage these, and I think you already spoke to it a little bit of that kind of short, medium to long-term solutions. I know it takes a while to study and you've got to find the right ones, but even any low-hanging fruit, obviously that it is a pain point for a lot of residents and and employees who work in those. Equally, though, like employers who, you know, commercial businesses, right, that work there, I would anticipate, I'd be curious to see what kind of, from a funding perspective, how you can really leverage that public-private partnership, given the benefits that a lot of, you know, really successful organizations in the Seaport will benefit from this investment as well. So I guess I'll just say.
That's certainly a very good point. Thank you.
This is focused on the Seaport, but will the implications of transit in that area also have impacts on discussions that are going on around the north-south transit connection between North Station and South Station? And is that in any way a part of this study?
So we will certainly be coordinating closely with MassDOT, who is running the North Station to North-South Rail Link study. I would see this as being a bit outside of the scope of that study. I think that what we're looking for are, you know, low-hanging fruit in the short term, and then in the longer term, items that can really help ameliorate the issue in the Seaport District itself. Where the North-South Rail Link is a downtown-focused connection, we'll certainly be coordinating with that, as we will with other state and city initiatives that sort of are at the periphery of this area. But yeah, to answer your question, I would say that's sort of more of a separate project.
So looking ahead to other sections of the city that are facing, I know we're about to discuss Brighton, but are we going to be doing other deep dive? What other neighborhoods need a deep dive transit plan that we aren't currently doing it in, and when are we going to be doing it? Do you know what I mean? Are looking at the rest of the city, what other deep dive transit plans should we be starting to do?
So for that, I'm going to hand it off to my boss, Tad Reed. Who can give you a big, you know, more of a broad understanding of the transportation planning initiatives that are going on across the city.
So I want to say that in answer to your question, we're working with the planning team on a transportation plan right now for the JP Rocks neighborhood. As part of all the other new planning initiatives that we'll be launching in East Boston, in Newmarket, and other parts of the city, all of those will include the downtown planning study. All of those will include a transportation component. So all of those neighborhoods will get a close look at the transportation issues, in addition to the projects that, in addition to the Seaport project and the project that I'll be presenting in just a moment in Alston Brighton. So several neighborhoods are going to be getting this a close look at transportation issues.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item number 9, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals to assist in the preparation of the Alston Brighton Mobility Study. John.
Chairman Burke, members of the board, we're going to be recommending that the director advertise and issue an RFP to prepare a mobility study for the Alston Brighton neighborhood. In the last few years, as in other neighborhoods in the city, the Alston Brighton neighborhood has seen significant amounts of new development. While vital for providing jobs and much needed housing, this growth can create a strain on the transportation network. The purpose of the Alston Brighton study is to evaluate where the bottlenecks are in the multimodal network and develop strategies to mitigate the impacts of development and improve mobility in the near term. Looking comprehensively at the neighborhood, we will engage residents, businesses, and stakeholders to hear ideas, thoughts, and concerns, build a transportation model that takes into account not only existing conditions, but pending development, that is, development approved but not yet built, as well as existing land use and transportation plans. We'll develop a menu of multimodal transportation improvements that can mitigate the impacts of pending development and make significant improvements in the quality of life for pedestrians, bikes, transit, and vehicles in Alston Brighton. And a key focus of the study will be developing a menu of improvements which can be built and or paid for by private development. As always, we will do this in collaboration with our partners at the Boston Transportation Department and state transportation agencies. We'll be issuing the RFP in July, and we would expect to come back to the board with a recommended consultant by September. The study will take approximately 1 year to complete. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Are there any questions from the board?
How will this interface with the studies that have already been done, particularly around commuter rail and the development along the Alston properties owned by Harvard and other developers in that area?
So there are a number. One of the things that I mentioned here is that we'll be looking at all existing land use and transportation plans. So the Alston I-90 interchange project, which is the project that includes a new station at West Station and connections to commuter rail, will be part of the existing conditions landscape that we include in the background section of this. So that'll all be included in this study.
Okay, are there any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, John. Item number 10, request authorization to accept a $250,000 grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and to enter into a grant agreement and to advertise and issue a request for proposals for the development of a flood resiliency overlay district and resiliency guidelines design.
Great. Thank you,
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Executive Secretary Polhemus. This past May, the Boston Planning and Development Agency, in coordination with the City of Boston's Environment Department, was awarded a $250,000 grant from the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program to assist in the development of zoning recommendations for a flood resiliency overlay district and flood resiliency design guidelines for new construction and building retrofits. This project will function to further implement the City of Boston's Climate Ready Boston report, which was issued in 2016. This report serves as really the city's strategic master plan for addressing the types of hazards and vulnerabilities the city will be facing with a changing climate. The implementation section of the Climate Ready report specifically called on the BPDA to explore the development of a future flood hazard area zoning overlay and methods to promote building development resilience for future flooding events. The technical analysis of future sea level rise vulnerability developed through this Climate Ready report and more recent waterfront district scale efforts has provided the city with really a sound understanding of the scope and scale of future flood hazards and risks. This is just a rendering from a report that came out more recently, more focused on East Boston waterfront, representing areas that could be inundated with up to 3 feet of sea level rise, which is what we're expecting by around 2070. This data and mapping has already been utilized to update the BPDA's climate resiliency checklist, which was updated last year and established 40 inches of sea level rise as the design datum that development projects must address as part of the Article 80 development review process. This is a shot from our sea level rise flood hazard map, which is active and online. Project proponents can go to this site, determine if they're in or outside of these zones, and get a better understanding of their flood risk in through the future. Although the checklist is an important tool for promoting resilience and adaptive measures with new development, current zoning really does not address any specific requirements for preparing for future climate conditions. This project will establish recommendations to revise the zoning code to incorporate the extents and heights of future flooding, ensure dimensional and use standards for new construction and retrofits, promote climate readiness, and encourage quality streetscape and public realm. The accompanying design guidelines will address the design measures and practices that will need to be implemented for a number of building typologies within the overlay district to reduce risks and structural damage from future flood events. This is just a great reference from New York's retrofitting building for flood risk guidelines. This, I think, is a great starting point for us in this process. Again, looking at the types of performance standards, design interventions we can be implementing to promote resiliency. This project will involve public meetings in affected neighborhoods to assist in the development of the recommendations and guidelines. These tools will better prepare Boston's homes, businesses, and cultural institutions for changing climate conditions and protect Boston's waterfront neighborhoods from coastal flooding impacts with future sea level rise. The next steps would involve issuance of an RFP. We would be back before the board with a selected consultant to enter into a contract. We anticipate the time period for this project running around 9 or 10 months and would need to be completed by June 30th of next year. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the board?
There's been a discussion of how sea level rise in this area is going to impact not only East Boston, but also Revere, Chelsea, Everett, up to Lynn.
Yes.
Will our study in some way coordinate with those municipalities to develop some collaborative solutions?
Yeah, there's a lot of information sharing amongst cities, and this grant program, Boston was one of, I think, 40 recipients through these state funds. So the state is very much focused on promoting, on the local level, advancement of vulnerability and preparedness plans, and also funds for implementation. So Boston Recovering Zoning and these guidelines here, other cities and towns are working on several other projects, and the whole intent is that there be information sharing through this grant program. So findings, information, guidelines that we develop will be shared through other towns and cities, as this is clearly a regional issue that we need to be contending with.
Can you just briefly describe like the number of flooding events that are anticipated to happen like per year, and how long each flooding event is expected to last?
Yeah, well, it really depends upon, and a lot of the risk assessment that was done was based upon 3 emission scenarios. So there's a low emission scenario that was studied, a medium emission scenario, and a higher emission scenario, which is really business as usual through the end of the century. And most of our risk assessment and analysis has really been more conservative on that higher end scale. It really is dependent in many ways on which area of the waterfront you're in. So lower elevation areas could see even high tide inundation, such as the seaport, as soon as 2040, 2050. So we're talking about high tide events once, twice a month that could be flooding certain areas. These major inundation areas that you see with a lot of this mapping is really associated with a 100-year storm event, a major storm event. And we could be seeing areas with 9 inches of sea level rise by 2030, 2040 that are fairly significant, and even greater as we look at potentially 21 inches by 2050 and that 40 inches by 2070. And all of this information and data, it's always evolving. So an important aspect of Climate Ready is that every 4 or 5 years we're going to be relooking at the data, the science, and modeling to make sure we're on track on that. But the Climate Ready Boston Report Vulnerability Assessment has a lot of great information. I'd be happy to provide that to you to get a better assessment as to what these risks and hazards are and when we can expect these levels of inundation.
But it's not a permanent state of being flooded. It's just flooding events will be more frequent and more severe.
Exactly. So you've got these major flood events and then tidal flooding as well, which is a more chronic condition that we can be facing. So really the long-term strategy is to really look at shoreline district scale protective measures that we can be putting into place in a number of our vulnerable waterfront communities. We've been working with the Environment Department, more focused on East Boston, Charlestown, with a report that came out last year, a report that will be coming out in the coming months on South Boston waterfront, and also be looking at the North End as to what those vulnerable locations are. And so the menu of design solutions that could be implemented, be them seawalls or new park systems, elevated plazas and whatnot, in these areas that are vulnerable to protect all these landside areas.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions on a motion as an order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Item number 11, request authorization to extend the tentative designation of CVSE LLC as redeveloper for the construction of up to 14 residential units, including 2 affordable units, on parcel L43B, located at 41 Regent Street in the Washington Park Urban Renewal Area. Right.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I'm requesting an extension to the tentative designation for CVSE LLC for BPDA parcel L43B, located at 41 Regent Street in Roxbury. That's project number Mass R24 in the Washington Park Urban Renewal Area. The parcel is 3,224 square feet. As you recall, CVJC LLC, a joint venture between Catalyst Ventures Development and Janey & Company, was originally tentatively designated in June 2017 for this project. CVSE LLC is a successor in interest to CVJC LLC. CVSE LLC is a joint venture between Catalyst Ventures LLC and Solidarity Enterprises LLC, a Janey entity. Both development partners, as well as the architectural firm Dream Collaborative, are Boston-based minority-owned businesses. This team was the sole respondent for the RFP for the parcel, which was due April 7th of 2017. Again, they're proposing to construct a 14-unit condominium on a site consisting of this BPDA land combined with 64 Alpine Street, an adjacent parcel of 5,703 square feet, which they own. The total combined lot size will be 8,927 square feet. As required by inclusionary development, they will include 2 affordable units. So the project is consistent with Mayor Welch's goal of building 53,000 units of housing across the city by 2030. We held 2 community meetings related to the property, one in November of 2016 to craft the RFP, and then we had the developer's presentation to the community on May 8th of 2017. And as you know, the team received an extension from you this past March in order to go to the Zoning Board of Appeal, which they successfully did on April 10th. So today's extension is needed to allow the team to continue finalizing their building plans and obtain financing with the goal of commencing construction by late summer, early fall. I'm happy to answer any questions and request that you please vote to extend the tentative designation of this developer.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 12, request authorization to award tentative designation of Tenants Development Corporation as redeveloper for the construction of a community center, including their headquarters office space on parcel 22A, located at 151 Lenox Street in the South End Urban Renewal Area. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I'm requesting a tentative designation for Tenants Development Corporation, I'll refer to them as TDC, of Roxbury for the development of a community center, including office space for its headquarters on BPDA-owned parcel 22A, which is located at 151 Lenox Street in the South End Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R56. It's an approximately 4,692 square foot parcel. We issued an RFP for it on December 21st of 2017 with responses due February 1st, 2018. And based upon feedback received during our community process, the development guidelines in the RFP sought the development of a community center or a mixed use of community space and housing. We received 2 proposals in response to the RFP, one from TDC and one from Boston Real Estate Collaborative LLC. Based upon the selection criteria of the RFP, TDC was determined to be the most highly advantageous proponent. In addition, the BPDA held a developers presentation community meeting on April 10th, 2018 at the Boston Water and Sewer headquarters, and a great deal of the support expressed at this meeting and overwhelmingly support that we received during the subsequent 2.5-week comment period favored the selection of Tenants Development Corporation for the development of this parcel. Established in 1968, TDC as a nonprofit tax-exempt corporation is one of the oldest minority developers and advocates for affordable housing in Boston. Their portfolio of approximately 350 affordable rental units is located in the South End and Lower Roxbury neighborhoods of Boston. The community center development that TDC is proposing is approximately 20,513 square feet with 4 stories above grade and a full basement, including a gymnasium, here's a rendering, computer lab, food pantry, commercial kitchen, community dining area, and youth programming space. The 2 top floors will be TDC offices and administrative space for the building's operations and programming. TDC programs and services are geared towards personal growth, empowerment, and enrichment of youth through seniors in the community. The total development cost of the project is projected to be approximately $9.9 million. It will be funded by a construction loan, new market tax credits, and a capital campaign. The development team consists of Davis Square Architects, Delphi Construction, Klein Horning Attorneys, and development consultants Robert Goldstein and Sharon Lowenthal. So as a result of the foregoing, we recommend that the board grant tentative designation status to Tenants Development Corporation, TDC.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
There was concern expressed by the People's Baptist Church, who've been using this space for parking. Can you talk about the parking arrangement that is going to be in place going forward?
Yes, Mr. Ed O'Donnell of the BPDA has arranged for parking at Northeastern University through John Tobin. Would you like to?
Yes, if I could just quickly answer the question. John Tobin, who I think many on the board know, is the Vice President for City and University Relations. Mr. Tobin has acknowledged and made the offer through my office of 25 parking spaces at the Renaissance parking lot facility located on Columbus Avenue. Those will be for Sunday services for up to 25 spaces from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and they will be done at no cost to the members of People's Baptist Church. That will also be for special events and funerals and the like.
Did that make the church more supportive of the community center project?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Did that make the church more supportive of the community center project? This project?
We have certainly made every attempt to keep the church informed. All of the public meetings were held at the church. There was wide-scale public notification. We would like to move the project ahead. We think the fact that there are these spaces being made available at no cost will be helpful. We have also had some indications from TDC that if this moves ahead, they would certainly work with People's Baptist to identify additional parking spaces on the site.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Oh, one recusal? Okay. Mr. Landmark recused himself. Item number 13, request authorization to extend the tentative designation of Boston Chinese Evangelical Corporation as redeveloper for the construction of an approximately 49,000 square foot, 4-story church facility to expand its ministries on a portion of parcel R3A-2, also known as a portion of parcel A, in the South Cove Urban Renewal Area. Raul.
Thank you, Chairman Burke. Good afternoon, again, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. The Boston Chinese Evangelical Church, also known as the BCEC, is currently located at 249 Harrison Ave, adjacent to parcel R3A-2 in the South Cove Urban Renewal Area. A number of years ago, the BCEC proposed a land swap to exchange their property with a portion of parcel R3A-2 of equal size. The purpose of the proposal is for the church to be able to expand its ministries to a new building on a rectangular size lot, as considering that the existing triangular configuration of the existing church site limits its ability to expand its capacity. Parcel R3A-2 is currently occupied with a basketball court and a modular structure currently being used by the Josiah Quincy School. The relocation of the school facility located on the parcel has to take place prior to the commencement of any new construction. This extension will allow the church additional time to complete an approved site plan, show evidence of equity funds and financial commitments, allow the relocation of the school facility to a different location, and will provide BPDA and City of Boston staff additional time to resolve any existing title issues.
Okay, thank you, Raul. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 14, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Courageous Sailing Center of Boston, Inc. for 1 year to permit the continued use of a portion of BRA loan-owned land located at Pier 4 in the Charlestown Navy Yard and for the Courageous Sailing Program until August 31st, 2019. Ed.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item requests the board's authorization for the director to execute an amended license agreement with the Courageous Sailing Center of Boston, Inc. That amended license agreement would extend the term for 1 year from August 1st, 2018 through August 1st, 2019 to permit the continued use of a portion of BRA-owned land located at Pier 4 in the Charlestown Navy Yard for a youth sailing program. The Sailing Center was established in 1987 and has been in the Navy Yard since the early 1990s. The center is established as a 501c3 public charity with the goal of affording every child of Boston with the opportunity to learn the sport of sailing free of charge. The center serves approximately 1,500 youth each year. The proposed license agreement has a license fee of $1 per year and provides that the center indemnify and protect the BRA against any liability associated with the use of the pier. Be happy to answer any questions that the board might have at this point.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions from the board?
Ed, what is the status of negotiating the long-term lease with them?
The status is this is really one of two waterfront sites that the agency owns that serve the youth of Boston. The other one being Berth 10 over in the Raymond L. Flynn Park, which is utilized by the Thompson Island Outward Bound Center. The Thompson Island Outward Bound Center has offered to invest in the revitalization of the pier as a first step towards a long-term license. This board has authorized the issuance of an RFP for a longer-term agreement. Not to give a long answer to a short question, but I think what happens with the Thompson Island will serve as a basis to try to do the same thing with the sailing center over in the Navy Yard. That is, we try to stay away from longer-term license agreements. Over the future, we expect that what happens in the Navy Yard and in the park will be some type of a lease agreement, but we continue to work with the sailing center, as we do with the folks over in the Raymond L. Flynn Park, to try to encourage their corporate support and fundraising to try to make this a more long-term and better established use of access to the harbor.
Okay, thank you.
Hope that answers your question.
Any further questions?
No question, just a comment. I just want to say that I'm very happy that we are supporting Courageous Sailing Center and the service that they provide to our city's youth, and this is a proud vote.
They are a great program.
If
Thank
there's
you.
no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Ed. Item number 15, request authorization to execute a license agreement with the Boston Public Health Commission for the use of 2 parcels of BRA-owned land located at 516 through R52 Main Street in the Charlestown Urban Renewal Area. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The staff is seeking the board's authorization for the director to enter into a license agreement with the Boston Public Health Commission for the use of 2 parcels of the BRA land comprising approximately 6,100 square feet in Charlestown. Boston EMS is part of the Boston Public Health Commission, has occupied these 2 parcels since 1982, having been relocated from its former site in City Square in order to accommodate the Central Artery North project. BRA staff is currently working with Boston EMS and has identified a potential longer-term relocation site. On November 16th of last year, the BRA authorized the director to enter into a license agreement for the use of a BRA parcel of approximately 3,300 square feet located at 516-R522 Main Street. Since that action, it has been determined that the adjacent BRA-owned parcel of land, which is approximately 2,800 square feet, should also have been included in that license agreement since it provides access and egress to the other parcel. As part of this proposed license agreement, Boston EMS will be responsible for obtaining any and all permits and licenses, as well as site maintenance. No fee is recommended due to the public benefit of this proposed use.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 16. Request authorization to execute a license agreement with St. Joseph Community, Inc. for the use of 3 BRA-owned parcels of land for the landscaping adjacent to 86 Crispus Actus Place residential development located on parcel C-5A in the Washington Park Urban Renewal Area. Ray.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Goldman, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. We're requesting authorization from the board to enter into a license agreement with St. Joseph Community, Inc. to allow use of 3 BPDA-owned parcels for landscaping purposes. The parcels are located adjacent to the St. Joseph's Community Residential Development, again at 86 Crispus Attucks Place, Roxbury, which is built on parcel C5A in the Washington Park Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R24. The BPDA vacant parcels total approximately 12,841 square feet, with street addresses of unnumbered Washington Street and unnumbered Dale Street. These parcels run along the edge of the St. Joseph property on Washington Street between Circuit Street and Dale Street. Originally, the parcels were slated to become part of the roadway to accommodate proposed street modifications. Ultimately, the street modifications did not require the use of the parcels. So as such, the parcels have the appearance of being part of the St. Joseph property as landscaped edges along Washington Street. St. Joseph Community, Inc. is a former Chapter 191A affordable housing project and consists of 137 units of residential housing located in 25 garden-style row houses under a cooperative form of ownership. We are presently completing title work and other due diligence necessary to initiate a property disposition of the parcels to St. Joseph's Community for open space use. However, since we are not yet ready to complete the disposition, and St. Joseph's wishes to move ahead with spring landscaping, a license agreement is required to allow them to access these parcels. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 17. Request authorization to execute an amendment to the ground lease with CVPA Chain Forge LLC that will, among other administrative matters, allow CVPA Chain Forge LLC additional time to close on construction financing and obtain building permits for the Chain Forge building project in the Charlestown Navy Yard in the historical monument area of the Charlestown Navy Yard. And 2, a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, a pilot, for the project with CVPA Chain Forge LLC in the city of Boston. And 3, to take all related actions. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In July of 2016, the board awarded final designation status to First Avenue Hotel LLC for the development of the Chain Forge building in the Charlestown Navy Yard into a 230-room hotel. In December of 2017, the BPDA approved a lease amendment to allow a joint venture partnership between First Avenue Hotel and CVPA Chain Forge LLC, and an extension of time to complete the financing and to obtain building permits. Since the last board meeting, the extensive and massive chain forging equipment has been auctioned off and is currently being removed, minus the equipment that will remain on site for its historical significance as part of the hotel. Having toured the building more than once myself, I can attest that no noticeable demolition or construction could take place until the equipment was removed. Some of it is as large as this room, and there's only several feet in between the equipment, so it really needs to be removed. So we're requesting a further amendment to the ground lease to allow the developer to finalize financing and obtain building permits by October 31st, 2018, and to allow the developer to finalize negotiations with the City of Boston pertaining to a pilot agreement for the project. The developer has delivered steady and methodical progress, and we're asking for just a little more patience to see this challenging development to completion.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis. Item number 18, request authorization to execute an amendment to the ground lease with Charlestown Rope Walk LLC to allow for additional time to close on the construction finance and to obtain building permits for Rope Walk project in the Charlestown Navy Yard, and to allow current members of Rope Walk Management LLC, which is a managing member of Charlestown Rope Walk LLC, to transfer a portion of their membership to Vision Rope Walk LLC and to take all related actions. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In June of 2016, Charlestown Rope Walk LLC was awarded final designation for the development of the Rope Walk building in the historic Charlestown Navy Yard. Charlestown Rope Walk is managed by Rope Walk Managing Member LLC. In December of 2017, the board authorized the transfer of 60% of the ownership of the managing member to a new partner, Boston Rope LLC. The lease was fully executed in December of 2017. The lease terms required that both financing and building permits would be received by March 31st of 2018. In March of 2018, the board authorized an amendment to the lease to extend the deadlines to allow the new team more time to finalize the terms and conditions of the operating agreement between the partners and to finalize financing for the project. The team was unable to agree upon terms and conditions of the operating agreement and have amicably parted ways. Managing member has interviewed several potential partners and has agreed in principle with Vision Rope Walk LLC for a 50% stake in the project. Vision Rope Walk LLC, or commonly known as Vision Properties, has developed several historic properties in Providence, Rhode Island, Lowell, Massachusetts, and Worcester, Massachusetts. They have extensive experience in historic rehab and historic tax credit applications. I personally called city officials in Lowell and Worcester, and the references were glowing. Vision Rope Walk will serve as the construction manager and finance manager for the project. The team is currently receiving and reviewing financial proposals from interested lenders. We fully expect that they'll be able to finance this challenging development. Requesting permission to amend the lease to authorize the director to execute necessary documents to allow the transfer of 50% of the membership interest to Vision Rope Walk LLC, subject to the BPDA receipt and approval of an operating agreement between the partners by July 15th of 2018. And we're also asking to extend the deadline for both final financing and building permits to September 30th of 2018. Both of those deadlines, both parties as well as BPDA staff feel are very attainable, and all of the terms and conditions of the lease will be unchanged.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Item number 19, request authorization to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Boston Parks and Recreation Department for the use of the BRA House Doctor contract for civil and maritime engineering with Pear Corporation for the bulkhead at Langone Park in the North End. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The BPDA has house doctor service contracts for civil and marine engineering with Pear Corporation through a process authorized by this board in February of 2017. Langone Park in the North End is owned and maintained by the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. Last fall, a portion of the bulkhead at Langone Park suffered a structural failure that required Parks to initiate emergency procedures to secure the area. In order to proceed with and to expedite these emergency repairs, Parks requested the use of BPDA's existing house doctor contract with the Pear Corporation. As part of this proposed MOA, Parks will be ultimately responsible for all costs associated with the project, with those costs not expected to exceed $80,000. Funding will be transferred to the BPDA upon approval of invoices submitted by Parks to the BPDA. So essentially, this agency will be reimbursed for all costs incurred on behalf of Parks by the Pear Corporation as a means of assisting these emergency repairs. Funds received from the Park Department through the proposed MOA will then be utilized to replenish the existing house doctor budget. It is therefore the staff's recommendation that the director be authorized to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston Department of Parks and Recreation for certain items related to the BPDA house doctor contract for the repairs to the bulkhead at Langone Park at no final cost to this agency. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 20 has been removed. Item number 21, request authorization to consent to assignment of the ground lease, MEPT Crosstown Center Office LLC, to the Boston Medical Center to take all related actions. Michael.
Good evening, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. This is a request to amend the ground lease of the Crosstown Center office building located at 801 Massachusetts Ave at the corner of Albany Street. This lease is between the BRA and MEPT Crosstown Center Office LLC, dated November 21st, 2005. This lease amendment would allow MEPT Crosstown to sublease approximately 23,400 square feet of space on the 6th floor of the office building to Boston Medical Center. The space will be used for a sleep lab and a general internal medicine outpatient suite, both institutional clinical uses, which are not currently permitted under the existing ground lease. MEPT Crosstown also has the option to purchase the leased premises for fair market value pursuant to appraisals with appropriate adjustments, and is currently in negotiations with BMC to sell the leased premises or portion thereof to BMC. The amendment to the ground lease is contingent on the MEPT and BMC coming to terms on the purchase of the leased premises or portion thereof with the BRA. BMC has communicated to the BRA staff that is very close to an agreement with MEPT Crosstown and anticipates closing on that agreement within the next few weeks. BPDA staff recommends approval and looks forward to continuing to work through final negotiations with both Boston Medical Center and MEPT Crosstown. I'll be happy to take any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Michael. Before I get to the next one, I'd like to invite Councilor Sabi George, assistant, is here. Are you going to represent her?
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke and Director Golden, members of the board. My name's Karen Foley, and I work in the Office of City Councilor at Large, Anissa Asabi George. I'm here to speak in support of the proposed project at 603 Dorchester Avenue. I attended the public meeting at the Tierney Center where there was overwhelming support, and all but one of the attendees spoke in favor of this project. Andrew Square Civic Association has been working very hard for many years to energize their neighborhood. And one way to do this is to bring business into their neighborhood. This would bring a much-needed family restaurant into Andrew Square. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay, item number 22. Request authorization to issue a certificate of approval in accordance with Article 80E, Small Project Review of the Zoning Code, for construction of a mixed-use building consisting of 24 rental units, including 4 IDP units, 2,012 square feet of ground floor restaurant space and bicycle storage space, located at 603 Dorchester Ave, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. John.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. This mixed-use development is in South Boston's Andrew Square. The project site is also located in the planned South Boston Dorchester Avenue study area, and it's compliant with that study. The proponents of 603 Dorchester Avenue is 2-6 Boston Street LLC, otherwise known as Christopher Roach and Thomas Falcucci. They filed an Article 80 application on April 17th, and the comment period concluded on May 25th. The proposal was well received by the community. This development team began their outreach in the community last summer, and it was overwhelmingly supported by people in the neighborhood. The big thing with the community is they really like the idea that This project, this commercial component, is going to bring a new restaurant into this neighborhood. They're really looking forward to that. The proposed project is also supported by the Andrew Square Civic Association, as well as City Councilor Frank Baker. Now I'd like to introduce George Moranci from the development team to further the presentation. George?
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Secretary Polimas, board members. This, as John said, is a project that has been extremely popular in the community. Also, as John said, the priority here for residents in this neighborhood of Andrew Square has been an activation of this site with a ground floor restaurant. It's located in the growth zone. It's in a 60-foot density bonus height area, and also in an area where ground floor commercial use is preferred. It's a site that does not lend itself to ground floor parking from either Boston Street or Dorchester Avenue, just because of the busyness of Andrew Square and the site, which dovetailed nicely with the fact that the community didn't want to see an inactive parking use on the ground floor. They wanted a restaurant. My client is giving them a restaurant. As John said, it complies with all of the requirements of the growth zone guidelines approved by this board. It is within a couple hundred feet of Andrew Square Red Line Station, which means that it's a true transit-oriented development. And again, as John said, it enjoys overwhelming support and has enjoyed overwhelming support throughout the community process. Unless there is a question on zoning or process, I would turn this right over to David Freed from Chu & Company Architects, and David will go through the urban design presentation.
Okay, thank you.
David?
Thank you, George. Good evening, Chairman Burke and members of the board. That slide is a picture of the proposed project as viewed from Boston Street. The site is a wedge-shaped site bounded by Boston Street and Dorchester Avenue. It's directly across from Andrew Square, Red Line Station. The cross streets are Southampton and Preble. Is that our site? We are a B1 zone, as George mentioned, and the growth zone is 1B. We have a height of 60 feet. That is a present aerial view of the site. That's a view of the site from Boston Street. There is access to zip cars and to Hubway stations very close to the site. And we are directly across from the Andrew Square T station and the bus access for several lines. Let me go. This is I'm sorry. That's a plan of the proposed amenity space in front, where we propose to have some outdoor seating that will be accessible, handicapped accessible, and the planters will have seasonal plantings that will be maintained by the proponent. This floor plan just illustrates that there will be an 840 square foot amenity space for the residents of the building. The programming has yet to be determined. It could be a fitness room. That'll be worked out as we go forward. That's a view of the front elevation. The building will be a brick building with aluminum windows and metal trim. That's the Boston Street elevation. That's the Dorchester Avenue elevation. That's the rear elevation, which will have some metal panels. The brick will return so that the brick will return on either side. That's a view again of the proposed project, and that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question. So, so we consistently will receive opposition letters on buildings that have no parking on site. Now, with transit so close and the use of rideshare, I mean, I think it makes sense, right, to me. But how do you respond to others that kind of don't see it that way and think that this is adding more units and condo owners are just going to bring an already more congestion or lack of parking in the neighborhood? How do you?
It's interesting because that's probably the only objection, which is kind of unique for a project of this size and this scope in such a sensitive area. So I think that's actually testament to the quality of the project and the amount of support it does enjoy. The response to that is a couple-fold, at least. Number one, the Dorchester Avenue study plan has a preferred parking ratio between 0 and 1. So we're certainly within that. We're at the zero end of it, but there's probably going to be no other development site within the study zone with this closer proximity to a rapid transit station, which we have here. You could literally throw a baseball and hit the Andrew Station. Also, it's a site that, again, almost uniquely in the area, is entirely ill-disposed to having any curb cut, whether on Boston Street or on Dorchester Avenue, providing ingress to and egress from the site, because this is statistically one of the busiest intersections in the Commonwealth, not simply the city. So I think that introducing, traffic into or out of the site from either Boston or Dorchester Avenue would be enormously problematic. These are rental units, which I think maybe we didn't touch upon in the presentation. So the prediction here, and I think will be the reality, is that these will be small units for renters who do not rely on private transportation, who will be utilizing the T ride-sharing services, bicycles, Uber, Zipcar, etc.
Any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Item number 23 has been removed. Item number 24 at Government Center. Request authorization to co-petition the Public Improvement Commission with the Bullfinch WP-B1 Owners LLC for the repairs to and along Bowker Street, Hawkins Street, and Sudbury Street in connection with the Government Center Garage project, and to enter into an agreement to transfer Bowker Green to the City of Boston. Michael.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. As mentioned, this is a request to co-petition the City of Boston's Public Improvement Commission, together with Bullfinch WPB1 Owner LLC, for a component of the Government Center Garage project. For some background, the first two phases of the Government Center Garage project were approved by this board on January 14th, 2016, including the WPB1 residential building. A notice of project change was later approved by this board for the WPB1 component to convert the top 11 floors of the building from rental to condominium units. This is the existing site plan for the garage. Just to orient you here, this gray section is the garage. You have the north end on this side, City Hall down below here, Greenway, Bullfinch Triangle here. The blue star represents the residential component building of the site. Zooming in a little, this shows the finished condition of the overall project site. This particular action focuses on the street level improvements along New Sudbury Street down here, Bowker Street over here, and Bowker Green on this side. Zooming in a little more to the residential component site plan, this shows some more detail around the streetscape improvements that are being requested. Bowker Green, shown here, is currently owned by the BRA and will be transferred over to the City of Boston. As you can see, the proponent will make some much needed improvements to the pedestrian connection between Bowker Street and New Sudbury Street, which will include a ramped accessible connection. The proponent has also committed to maintain this space in perpetuity. And then lastly, this is just a before and after rendering of the improvements. So with that, I'm joined by the development team and be happy to take any questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Item number 25. Request authorization to issue a determination waiving further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80-A of the zoning code, in connection with the notice of project change for the Hub on Causeway, aka the Boston Garden Project. Phase 3 office tower component in the North Station Economic Development Area for higher floor-to-floor heights, floor-to-increased ceiling heights, larger maximum floor plates, higher occupiable floor above the podium building, 2 enclosed 2-story balconies on portions of the office tower, and large maximum office tower height from grade, and to amend and adopt the First Amendment to the report and decisions to Chapter 121A project approving the revised Phase 3 component, and to take all related actions. Raul.
Again, good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. The item before you this afternoon is the Phase 3 component of the Hub on Causeway project, formerly known as the Boston Garden Project. The project in its entirety was approved by the BRA board on December 19, 2013. Since that time, construction of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the project commenced, with the first phase of the project anticipated for completion by summer 2019 and the subsequent phases following. Today you will be seeing and voting specifically on the proposed revisions to the Phase 3 office tower component of the project. The proposed changes to the previously approved office component include increased floor-to-floor heights, outdoor terraces, increased floor plate sizes, an increase in the maximum tower height from grade, among other design changes. With respect to process, the proponent submitted a notice of project change with the BPDA on March 2nd, 2018, which initiated a public comment period which concluded on April 2nd. During this time frame, the BPDA held and sponsored a publicly advertised joint impact advisory group and community meeting to review the proposed revisions. In addition to the Article 80 process, the revised project also underwent extensive review by the Boston Civic Design Commission, where the project underwent several revisions. The Boston Civic Design Commission ultimately approved the revised project, which you will be seeing shortly on May 1st, 2018. At this time, I would like to introduce you to Juliana DeMombro, Project Manager for Boston Properties, to further presentation.
Okay, thank you, Raul.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time today. I will be brief. Thanks, Raul, for the introduction. So we're talking about the office tower as part of the Hub on Causeway project. Just to orient everybody, we're right in front of the existing TD Garden and North Station. This is a picture of some context, and this is the project's Phase 1 and 2, which are currently under construction. We have the east podium, and atop that is where we're proposing to put this third phase, the office tower. And here on Causeway Street, the east podium is over here on the east side of the hub, which will be the new entrance to North Station and the TD Garden, and the new tower lobbies right there. As Raul mentioned, this design has evolved, and there were sort of two main drivers for this latest iteration. One was market demand and certain programmatic and design elements that our customers were looking for, and the other was our desire to have this building fit or knit more cohesively with the fabric of the project and the surrounding area. So in working with the BCDC, we were before them 4 times. We had 2 design workshops with them at subcommittee, and we have come up with what we think is a better tower than when we went in, and I think it responds well to a lot of the comments. As Raul mentioned, there's several differences. The main changes that we're asking for from the previous approval relate to height and floor plate size. So going forward to the height, when this was originally approved, it was approved at 420 feet to the top of the highest occupiable floor. So not included in that was the mechanical penthouse area. In 2016, we had done a redesign and had stayed below the 20th floor. And as we looked at this tower and based on the market demand, we actually have ended up growing the height to, we're saying up to 510 for a reason I'll get to in a moment. And the drivers for that were, we actually grew the building. So the original 2013 design was 525,000 square feet approximately, and now we're at approximately 630,000 square feet. That's still within the 668,000 square feet that's allowed in the current 121A zoning. So in part of growing it, we added 2 floors. We also increased the floor-to-floor heights of typical floors to allow for more flexible space programming and also to allow for a more efficient and sustainable heating, cooling, and ventilation system. We also added 2 floors here that have a 20-foot floor-to-floor height to allow for innovation or maker space, which we're seeing a lot of tenants wanting in their office space premises. And lastly, we added a roof deck at the mechanical level and a small amount of occupiable space adjacent to that roof deck. And as a result, that's now, the entire mechanical level is now counted as part of the occupiable space, and therefore our height has gone up additionally. Currently that's around 490, 495 square feet, but given that we're early in construction documents and that height will be dictated by the mechanical, we're requesting to be able to go up to 510 so that we're not back before you for a small change. The second sort of major change from, or small change, I guess, from the original approval has to do with maximum floor plate size. So originally, the office towers were allowed to have a floor plate of up to 25,400 square feet above a height of 155 feet from grade. There was a bonus of about 2,000+ square feet that actually allowed that maximum to be 27,594. And so in the current design, floors 15 through 31 are staying within that allowed area, but on the lower floors, on floors 9 through 14, we're actually seeking to expand the floor plates for up to 35,500 feet. And again, that's based on a lot of market demand and direct feedback from customers that they want to see larger floor plates. We specifically kept those to a lower level in the building so that we didn't obstruct any of the view corridors up on the higher portions of the towers that we had wanted to maintain. So just in conclusion, this is sort of what the redesigned tower looks like. This is a view looking north, and here's a view looking south. So thanks, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Here, no questions.
Well, maybe just one comment. No, it sounds like I like to hear that you had a lot of workshops and spending time and feel like you got a better building after spending time with the BCDC, and I think they don't get enough thanks and praise as well for all they do to as design professionals who know what they're doing in this space.
Yep.
So just happy to hear that collaboration was so successful.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a brief recess, 7-minute recess. And then we'll return and have the first hearing. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the third amendment to the Joslin Diabetes Center Institutional Master Plan. This hearing was duly advertised on May 30th, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Ms. Sullivan will now proceed with the presentation.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. Secretary Polhemus. We're here today requesting the approval of the Joslin IMP amendment and renewal. Joslin is seeking to add restaurant and service use to the ground floor of the Joslin Diabetes Center at 415 Brookline Avenue, and to also renew their IMP for a term of 5 years. Over those 5 years, Joslin is not anticipating any proposed institutional projects. We had a 30-day comment period and received positive feedback at a public meeting from the community on the excellent work that Joslin does every day and for the amendment and renewal before you. Today, I am joined by Darren Baird from Goulston Stores to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Darren Baird from Goulston Stores. Good evening, or good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joslin Diabetes Center, and I'm here joined tonight by Maria Buckley, the General Counsel of Joslin. Wanted to give you a brief overview of Joslin. Not sure how familiar folks are with Joslin and what they do and what their mission is. Let me make sure I don't mess up the clicker. Here we go. Joslin was established in actually 1898. I guess I fudged 8 years. Sorry about that. By Elliot Joslin, and it employs today approximately 480 individuals, from researchers to clinicians. And their mission is to, they see approximately 23,000 adult and pediatric patients a year, and they have 30 research clinics and are a Harvard-affiliated institution. Joslin's mission is to eradicate diabetes while delivering exceptional compassionate care and education to not only treat but also empower patients and their families to help manage diabetes and improve their overall health and quality of life. Joslin's mission is carried out in this one building on this one parcel. It's called 415 Brookline Avenue. I guess that's actually its assessing address, but it's also known as 1 Joslin Place. This is the northwest corner of Joslin Place and Brookline Avenue in the Longwood Medical and Academic area. It was originally constructed in 1956 and then renovated twice in 76 and again in 91. It received its original IMP approval from the BRA in 2003. And then there was a 2008 amendment that extended the term for 10 years to April 29th of 18. And also removed what is now the Longwood Center site from the IMP area on the City of Boston zoning map. We're here tonight requesting an extension of the IMP from April 29th of 2018 to April 29th of 2023. There are no new projects in the IMP amendment or renewal, and what the amendment also asks for is to add officially and technically restaurant and service uses to the allowed as of right first floor uses at the property, because technically right now those aren't permitted and retail is, and sort of in keeping with the activation and desires on Brookline Avenue plus the patient's needs for food sources that are close by. This is a use that makes sense and sort of fits with the neighborhood. And so that is what we are requesting this evening.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
That's it. Yep.
It's just the way we like them.
Yep. Me too.
Okay. Before we have any questions, it's a public hearing, so I'm going to take comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal, please step right up. Anyone that would like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Minor Perez, representing the Carpenters Union, would like to go on record of support of this request.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Polimis, Brian Director Golden, Gary Walker, electricians looking around, would like to speak in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Okay. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing no further comments, are there any questions from the board?
I just had one quick question. Do you know what this restaurant is scheduled to provide, what their hours might be?
Yeah, sure. So the proposed tenant we have right now is Bon Mi. You may know them from their trucks, but they also have bricks and mortar. What we needed for this site was, first of all, as Darren said, it really creates a hardship for our patients in particular to not have a food source within the building. But we needed to get a food vendor that wasn't doing a lot of cooking, if you will. So their Vietnamese food really kind of fits that bill. So that's the tenant that we believe is coming in, and we hope that they come in the fall.
Okay, you folks do very important work, and it strikes me that a restaurant associated with your mission would be the kind of place that a lot of people would want to get to at all hours. So I guess I would encourage you to continue this service. Obviously, your work is terrific work, but also the restaurant, I think, can serve a lot of people who may not necessarily only be your patients.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations. Item number 37. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code, to consider the third amendment to the second amended and restated development plan 49, 51, and 63 Melcher Street within Planned Development Area Number 69, South Boston, 100 acres, located within the Fourth Point Channel District of South Boston. This hearing was duly advertised on May 30th, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In the BPDA hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of brief rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Ms. Kerr will now present the
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. This board last saw this project on November 30th, 2017, when you voted to approve the fourth notice of project change and second amendment to the second amended and restated development plan for 49, 51, and 63 Melcher Street. That approval allowed for the acknowledgement of approximately 2,695 square feet of existing residential gross floor area in the basement of 63 Melcher Street as office and/or cultural and/or community use, and the conversion of the building's 29 market rate units from apartments to homeownership units, with the building being submitted to a condominium. Before you this evening is the third amendment to the second amended and restated development plan, which was filed by JSIP 63 Melcher, LLC, on April 20th, 2018. The only change under this proposed amendment is in the acknowledgement of an additional 848 square feet of the existing 63 Melcher Street basement space as gross floor area for office and/or cultural and/or community use. Under the third amendment, the total gross floor area of office and/or cultural and/or community use space in the 63 Melcher Street basement area will be 3,543 square feet. The proponent will also be providing approximately $29,548.62 in housing linkage funds and an estimated $5,916.81 in jobs linkage funds based upon the current plans. I'll hand it over to Dennis McKenna, legal counsel for the proponent. Dennis, myself, and Matt Frazier of Jones Street Investment Partners will be happy to answer any questions you may have after Dennis concludes his presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director, Madam Secretary, members of the board. This project probably sounds awful familiar to you because we were here in the fall and basically you've already approved this project. What happened, though, is when we came before the board to repurpose the basement space, we were advised, our client was advised that the basement space was 2,695 square feet. And so that's what you approved. When the architects went back out and field measured after we obtained your approval and the approval of the zoning commission, we learned that the actual square footage, the exact same area, was, when measured in the field, was an additional 848 square feet. We brought that to the attention of the BPDA, and we went through the entire process again, but you've seen this project before. This is to acknowledge the additional 848 square feet. That's the entirety of my presentation.
Thank you. We'll hold off on questions. I'll take public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, so hearing none, are there any questions or comments by the board?
I have a ton of questions about this 800, and I'm just playing. No, and 48 square feet, and not just playing. No. Sorry, I haven't slept a lot.
Well, you know what? How did they miss it? How did they miss it the first time around?
I'll give you the architect's number and you can call.
Right, okay.
We don't know. We asked that same question. Apparently, there was a miscommunication, but that was the information that Jones Street was provided to us. We provided to you. The only thing we were able to ascertain is perhaps they didn't actually do the field measurements when they gave us those numbers.
Okay. All right, so if there's no questions and no further comments, a motion is in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Quickest public hearing on record.
I know.
Okay, this is item number 38. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code regarding the proposed modification to the South End Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R-56 for Parcel 3C. Proposed modifications to the South End Urban Renewal Plan, project Mass R-56 for Parcel 4, and a proposed development plan for Planned Development Area number 114, Sharman Ave, Washington Street, in the South End neighborhood of Boston. This hearing was duly advertised on June 1st, 2018 in the Boston Herald, and a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by agency staff. Staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of brief rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Casey Hines will now present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, at this time, staff is requesting that you defer this hearing to allow for additional community process.
Excuse me, we need to table this motion. We need to table it.
Yeah,
not
that's
defer
what
it.
she
She said defer it. We need to table it.
Oh.
Can we table this?
So what you're recommending is in the motion will be is to table the public hearing for the development plan for Planned Development Area number 114, Sharman Ave, Washington Street, and its associated votes until the time and date to be determined by the director. That will be the motion. Does anyone want to second that motion?
Second.
I'm sorry, the motion's in order.
I move that we table the public hearing.
Okay. Second?
I second the motion to table.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 39. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the development plan for Planned Development Area Number 118 in connection with the proposed Rio Grande project in Roxbury. This hearing was duly advertised on May 31st, 2018 in the Boston Herald. In a BPDA hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so, again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a period of 5 to 10 minutes for brief rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Mr. Whiteside will now begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we would request that the board look to table the public hearing for a future date.
Very good. So there's a motion on to table this.
I move that we table the Rio Grande hearing.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tabled.
Thank you.
That passed. Thank you, Dana. Item number... Wait, that was concludes the public hearings.
Yeah, yeah.
That concludes the public hearings. I'm going to go back to item number...
26.
I have it right here. 26. Go to item number 26.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board.
Let me read this first.
I'm just ready to go. I'm so anxious. I was ready. No delays.
This is the new Gary. Item number 26. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, Small Project Review of the Zoning Code, for construction of mixed-use building consisting of 31 condominium units, including 4 IDP units, 5,300 square feet of retail space, 21 off-street parking spaces, and 31 bicycle storage spaces located at 1950 Washington Street, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. Gary.
That couldn't have started any worse, but glad for keep giving us all these memories of me. But good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, members of the board. On April 6th, the Community Development Corporation of Boston filed a small project review application with the BPDA proposing the renovation of the existing 4-story structure, demolition of the adjacent 1-story metal garage, and a 6-story addition located at 1950 Washington Street in Roxbury. CDC of Boston's proposal is comprised of 31 condominium units with 21 mechanical lift parking spaces and 31 bike storage spaces, 4,500 square feet of ground floor restaurant space, and approximately 800 square feet of office space that is to be occupied by the CDCs of Boston. The project site sits on approximately 10,400 square foot lot directly across from Ramsey Park, and the total development cost is approximately $17 million. A public meeting was held on April 25th at the Mandela Homes in Roxbury, with the public comment period concluding on May 6, 2018. The proponent also held a meeting with Director Butters at the project site on May 8, 2018. The proposed development will provide for 31 new home ownership opportunities, including 4 units affordable at 70% of the AMI, also with direct access to downtown Boston via the MBTA Silver Line, and $25,000 in improvements to Ramsey Park. I would like to now call upon CDC of Boston President James Dilday for just some brief remarks and background of the CDC, followed by architect Chris Drew. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have at the conclusion.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke.
Don't worry.
Director Golden, members of the board. My name is James Dilday. I'm the president of the CDC of Boston, otherwise known as the Community Development Corporation of Boston Incorporated. We're a nonprofit entity. We were created in 1969 as an outgrowth of the old model cities program. Believe it or not, back in 1969, I was just about to start law school. I was a member of the Model Neighborhood Board, and I happened to sit on the board of the CDC at that time. But I have to admit, I haven't sat all those years. And it's interesting in that it's different from the other community development corporations that you're going to see. And that when the Model Neighborhood Board established this program through Model Cities, it was given a grant of money to the CDC. The CDC used that grant of money. It tried to work with small neighborhood businesses, mom and pop stores, and things of that nature, and made those types of investments. And it has moved on. In the 80s, it helped to develop a digital equipment assembly plant in Roxbury. It has also invested in the Morgan Memorial Goodwill location on Harrison Avenue. It was an investor in the One Lincoln Place development here in downtown Boston, and it's currently an investor in the Marriott Hotel project going up on Melnia Katz Boulevard. Unlike the other CDCs in Boston, we're not organized under the legislation that establishes CDCs after we were created in 1969. As a result, we don't get any state, local, or federal funds. We don't have any set-asides. We don't have any tax credits that come for the low-income tax credits. All of our money we've raised on our own. And so we're a little bit different from those CDCs. Although we work with MACDAC, Massachusetts Association of Community Development Corporations, we are not a full-fledged member because we're not the same type of CDC that they all work with. We've also worked with local community groups, and from our program, we're going to give $25,000 to the Boston Parks Department as part of the rehabilitation of Jim Rice Park. We can answer questions for you after I turn it over to Chris to talk about our architectural plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you, board members. Project Locust is, we are right on Washington Street. Ramsey Park is right across the street from us. This is the existing building now. What we will be doing is taking down the one-story garage, adding a 6-story addition in the same footprint, and adding another 2 stories to the top of the existing building. This is just another image from the corner of Thorndike and Washington Street of the existing building. Looking down from the corner of Washington Street at Newcomb Street, looking towards the view from the top of the existing building from the roof just down at the park. Existing plot plan, ground floor plan. So again, this is the existing building here, the existing 1-story garage, which will be going away for a 6-story addition there, and a 2-story addition on top of the existing building there. The proposed front elevation, so again, you can see the existing building there. This is that new 6-story addition there. And the roof is all the same height. We've just got a higher parapet wall there, as we've been working with BPDA design staff to make it look, give it some nice compliments to the neighborhood in the building. The right side elevation along Thorndike Street. The rear elevation. The left side elevation. And then this is just a couple proposed renderings looking down Washington Street. So again, at the corner of Washington and Thorndike. And then we've just got a little enlarged here of some outside patio seats for the restaurant or ground floor retail. Looking up Washington towards Newcomb. And this point, pass it back over to you.
Good. So that concludes your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
Just one question. How has this project been received by, the community, and particularly abutters, and anything kind of that's left over?
So the meeting was well received at the public meeting in Mandela Home. There were some abutters who arrived with some concerns about the project. More specifically to just information and understanding what it really entailed. The proponent then held a meeting on site with the abutters, who then sent in numerous support letters.
Okay, if there's no further questions, and a motion is in order.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
So moved. Sorry, I thought you were making a comment.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, thank you.
We're off today. We're just off.
Item number 27, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, small project review of the zoning code in connection with the notice of project change for the Parker and Terrace Street mixed-use development, increasing the total rental unit to 60 units with 12 IDP units, 33 parking spaces, 5,690 square feet of ground floor commercial space, and a gross floor area space of 49,534 feet, located at 77 Terrace Street, and to take all related action. Gary.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. On April 6, 2018, Sebastian Mariscal Studios filed a notice of project change with the BPDA, proposing the construction of Boston's next E-Plus green building project, a new 3-story, approximately 49,534 square foot mixed-use building that will include 60 residential rental units, 12 of which are income restricted. The project also includes 88 bicycle parking spaces, 33 car parking spaces, and approximately 5,690 square feet of ground floor commercial space. Total development cost is approximately $25 million. The BRA board voted to approve the first iteration of the E-Plus Parker and Terrace Street development in February 2014. And that consisted of the construction of a new 3-story mixed-use building with 44 residential units, 10 income-restricted units. The development team was selected through the Boston E-Plus Green Building Program, a joint initiative of D&D, Department of Neighborhood Development, BPDA, through a competitive RFP process. The MPC before you proposes an increase in 16 total residential units and 3 parking spaces from the originally approved project. Public meeting was held on April 23rd at the BCYF Tobin in Mission Hill. The public comment period concluding on May 6, 2018. The proponent also held a D&D/BPDA sponsored community meeting at the Mission Church on March 6, 2018. The proposed project will provide for the redevelopment of an environmentally contaminated site, the creation of 50,000 square feet of community gardening and public art space on Parker Street. 2 additional affordable units bring the total affordability to 20%. There's numerous deep green building features that will support the LEED for Homes Platinum certification. Efficient building design and on-site solar will enable the project to surplus energy back to the grid, making this the largest net positive energy building in Boston. The project was widely supported at community meetings held by both D&D and the BPDA, as well as support from Representative Jeffrey Sanchez. We'll continue to work through design review prior to issuance of the certificate of approval. I will now call upon the proponent and architect, Sebastian Mariscal, and we'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening. I'm very excited to be back again in front of this board. After 3 years, what is important to point out is that the vision and the community merits of the project are still intact. Here is the location of the site in Terrace. You can see if I have a pointer. Yeah. So here is Terrace. Here is Parker. Parker, it's a residential street. Terrace is a more of a commercial street. Here is Parker. One of the things that we experienced when we first visit the site is that Parker is very narrow, And just like the community members pointed out that they really appreciate that open space as they go in between the buildings right now with a vacant land. Here is terrace. You can see the steep site going up to Parker. And here it's where I point out that the vision of the project it's still the same. The project came out from a revolutionary RFP put together by the BPDA and the D&D. It's an E+ project. It's a LEED Platinum project. We have more than 50,000 square feet of green space, open green space. The site is close to 60,000 square feet. We have no massing on Parker. Before we start designing, we met with the community members. We read all the community meeting minutes. And one of the things that the neighbors were very concerned is about the massing on Parker, curb cuts on Parker, traffic on Parker, and shading to the neighbors, but also shading to the community gardens. Then also we have a pedestrian walkway from Parker to Terrace, so the neighborhood can walk through our project to connect the two streets. And also we have an art programming. So explaining a little bit of the project. Again, here is Terrace, here is Parker, and we have 35 feet in height difference. 35 feet is about 3 stories. So Terrace, Parker, and what we wanted to do is respond to the site and to the conversation with the community. On Terrace, we wanted to have a building, but on Parker, we want to create a landscape. So what we did is we terraced the site, we start building up the building, we created a roof garden on all the roof at the level of Parker, which are the community gardens. There are more than 14,000 square feet of community gardens. And then we carve out the building to create 5 big plazas of public space. Everything is vegetated from the public plazas to more than 55 private gardens for the 60 units. So the concept of public space, of open green space, of not only quality of interior space, but also exterior space, it's on the public realm, but also on the private units. Here is an elevation, this is on Terrace. The idea is to make an elevation where the building doesn't feel as a blank wall or as a straight wall. It feels more of a series of townhouses, which is a typology that we appreciate in Boston. And in addition to this typology, we have different heights where you see a garden of this unit over here, you see the roof gardens on the top. So the combination of breaking the massing and adding the vegetation softens the perception of the building from the outside. And then on the Parker, I didn't even show an elevation because there is no building. There is on Parker pretty much at the same level, the whole thing, it's a park. So the neighbors, the view of the street, it'll always enjoy this view. These are the community gardens over here. That we have been talking to the guerrilla gardeners in Mission Hill, and we have been working together with them for this initiative. And then at the end, over here, there are the PV panels. The idea is that as you arrive from Parker, you see this park. As you start coming down to the project and experience the project, you find this public space. So this is not only the outdoor vestibule where all the tenants can go to their units. You can see a door here. You can see a garden here for this unit. You can see the gardeners on the top working on the gardens and looking down. We wanted to create a very energized space where not only the tenants but also the community can walk by, can sit down and play chess, walk the dogs, etc. So those plazas, or that render that I showed you of the plaza, are these plazas that show in green over here. So there are a very big space of public space. This one is 3-story high. These two ones are 2-story high, and these two are 1-story high. So the quality of human scale also changes, and the light, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the presentation? Yes. Any questions from the board?
Can you explain how you were able to add all the new units?
So one of the interesting parts of the concept of the project is that the building is not conceptualized as a building, but more as an organism that grow by adding one unit next to the other. So we were able to play with the void of the plazas and the volume, and we were able to change some of the townhouses. We have a lot of we had more townhouses on the second and third level that you get into the main level and you have an interior stair. So now we added flats where we reduce a lot of square footage that was on the stair. Then also we reduce some of the 2 bedrooms and the 3 bedrooms, and that add up to adding the additional units.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
I think my question was just answered because the memo we have indicates that you're only looking for an increase of about 1,200 gross square feet, but you're adding 18 units somehow in 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable math, but I pass this site at least once a day. And I have to commend you on what I think is very innovative and thoughtful solution to addressing the community's desire to have green space and open space there on a street which is, in and of itself, Parker Street is not particularly residential, just a little. But I commend you on a very innovative solution to addressing the community's need while increasing the number of units.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no
I just think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like, and I've come across this board, like, you know, we have long meetings and see a lot. Like, this is just cool. Like, wow. Like,
thank you very much.
Get some awards for it or something. Like, I don't know. This is just amazing.
Yeah,
thank you.
Hopefully that will come.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Item number 28, request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving the requirement of further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D of the zoning code for the Willett Street extension consisting of construction of 29 single-family homes, including 2 IDP units with off-street parking, and to take all related actions. Ashley.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, good evening again. Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. I'm pleased to be before you this evening to recommend approval of what BPDA staff believes to be a unique and contextually appropriate proposal for 29 single-family homes on the extension of Willett Street in the city's West Roxbury neighborhood, which has been supported by the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. The proponent, CAD Builders, filed a letter of intent with the Boston Planning and Development Agency on November 6, 2017, and a 5-person impact advisory group was assembled. I'd like to thank and acknowledge the members of that impact advisory group, who were all first-time IAG members, for their involvement throughout this Article 80 review process and their commitment to the neighborhood and the city as a whole. Following the receipt of a project notification form on February 26, 2018, a scoping session was held on March 19th, and the BPDA facilitated a first IAG and public meeting on March 20th. During this first public meeting, it became clear that there are existing neighborhood concerns relative to cut-through traffic on the streets surrounding the project site. A vehicular connection from the project site to Washington Street would have allowed cars traveling out of the project site to potentially not need to traverse the surrounding streets. And although a paper street exists on city records to connect Willett Street to Washington Street, the proponent does not have control over that portion of Willett Street. Pursuant to community feedback and ongoing staff review, the BPDA issued a request for supplemental information on May 7th. In response, the proponent filed a supplemental information report with the BPDA on May 23rd, and second IAG and public meetings were held on May 31st. With the submission of their supplemental information report, the proponent also further engaged a traffic engineer from Howard Stein Hudson to conduct traffic counts and examine the issues as raised by the community. The proponent should be credited for their diligence throughout the Article 80 review process in responding to feedback raised by the community, BPDA, and city staff. BPDA staff feels that the proponent has duly responded to all feedback that arose from the initial filing and proposal. Before handing you over to Chris Tracy, consultant representing CAD Builders, I would like to highlight several key benefits in connection with this proposal. This proposal brings the exciting creation of 2 single-family IDP homes. One of these homes will also be ADA Group 2 accessible. A pedestrian walkway will be constructed from the easterly property line to the abutting property, allowing for access to Washington Street so folks can get access to MBTA buses and shops along Washington Street. A public connection to the open space on the westerly boundary of the project site will also be constructed, again open to the public. Folks can walk their dogs, use the open space, etc. And in conjunction with BPDA staff and the Boston Transportation Department, the proponent has committed to traffic calming measures on streets neighboring the project site to alleviate the concerns and impacts of existing cut-through traffic. I'll pass you off to Chris Tracy now, who will walk you through the proposal as a whole. Both Chris and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have at the conclusion of his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aisling. Good evening, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, and Secretary Polhamus. Chris Tracy from O'Neill & Associates in Boston. Excited and honored to be back before this board, albeit on the other side of the table.
Confused for a second, actually.
Yeah.
What's going on?
First time back. But with a project that my development team and I are really excited to bring to this board and bring to the city of Boston. My client is CAD Builders, Anthony Delizia, who had a last-minute family obligation that came up and he couldn't be here with us tonight. But I'm going to walk us through the proposal, walk us through the process we've gone through, and we humbly ask the board's approval with, again, what we think is a really unique and different from what you see on your average monthly meeting here, but a really special opportunity to create new housing and new home ownership opportunities in the city of Boston and increase our existing housing stock in the city. So my client and I had done a lot of work in the West Roxbury community over the past decade or so. Me working for the city, then BPDA, him building single-family homes in this neighborhood and throughout Southwest Boston, and we kind of came up to the impetus and the idea behind the proposal together after hearing the feedback from residents of this community and of Southwest Boston. And what we heard was that folks weren't necessarily opposed to the development and the growth going on across the city per se, but they really had a hope to see the new development fit within the character of the existing neighborhoods they live in. Obviously, folks who choose to live in West Roxbury like the feel of sort of the suburban town in the city of Boston. So enter what we think is a really unique opportunity to do just that on 7.75 acres of land. The proposal is for 29 single-family homes, 29 new opportunities for home ownership while displacing 0 residents. We're really excited that 2 of the homes on site will be IDP units. We'll also be making a contribution to the IDP fund. We think this is the best use for the site. This was a former construction yard and quarry land. There will be no major canopy or tree cover displaced. There will be minimal blasting when we build the site. We designed it to fit within the existing topography of the site. Starting in summer of 2017, my client and I undertook a grassroots approach to this where we met with local elected officials, neighbors, and community groups, and we floated the idea. We received a generally warm response by the community because, again, those reasons I stated earlier of folks desiring to see a project like this out in West Roxbury. We're proud to say that each home will sit on a lot that's at least 6,000 square feet, which is the threshold for zoning out in West Roxbury. Each home will have 2,600 square feet of living space, all have associated off-street parking to go along with it. So this is the site on my little yellow cursor here. This is Roxbury Latin's property. This is the West Roxbury Cruststone property. This is Washington Street. Traversing this way takes you to Rosendale Square, then Forest Hills, and eventually downtown Boston. Traversing to the southwest takes you to the town of Dedham. Why don't I run through what the site looks like now? This was the old Tedesca yard. It was a construction yard, and some folks in the neighborhood bemoaned the existence of it because it is in the middle of a single-family neighborhood, so There were no sad feelings when the land was sold and when we proposed single-family housing. The majority of the site is a piece from the LaRusso property that my client has under agreement to purchase, and LaRusso is the owner of the West Roxbury Quarry. So folks in the neighborhood, again, we're excited to see single-family homes go where otherwise it would be quarry, rock blasting, and construction debris. So this is the site as it is now. Again, not tearing down any major trees. It's low-laying canopy, and it allows sort of for a road to be built and 4 homes to go in. So this is the site map. Little unclear to tell here, a little easier to see here on our landscape plan. Again, 29 single-family homes is the proposal. And again, I'll run you through. These are the designs that CAD Builders has done in this immediate neighborhood. They've built homes on Sparrow Street, Maplewood Street, Woodley Ave, and Searle Road in West Roxbury. Folks have been very pleased with the work they do. They've got a lot of experience in this actual community. So again, it's been well received by the community. We did have a community meeting with the abutters that Ashling had mentioned, and we heard of some concerns about the vehicular access to the site. BPDA issued a request for further supplemental information. We responded in kind, and they asked us to look into a few pertinent issues that I'll speak to now. One is the residents who live on Carroll Circle, which is right about here at my cursor. I believe they've written to you folks who are on the board. They currently experience a lot of water retention runoff problems on their property, and it is a real problem. That's because the previous construction site here was storing debris and burying debris in the ground. It did nothing to treat their water. There's nothing toxic in there, but it caused all that runoff on Carroll Circle. So as we've gone through the site, we've realized that in working with Boston Water and Sewer, we have to retain all water and treat all water on site. So we have 2 drainage infiltration systems with underwater tanks to treat our water to prevent any runoff on site. This is the second site that we added here for an infiltration system that will cure the problems that currently exist at 19 Carroll Circle, who I know has written to board members. The other pertinent issue that came up was that folks who lived on what are commonly known as the bird streets, Eagle, Heron, Thrush, and Willette Street, had asked the proponent if they could look into a vehicular means of egress and ingress to get towards Washington Street. And we would say that the original design of the plan was never a Washington Street plan. It was always hoped to be an extension of the bird streets. But hearing their feedback, we took it under serious consideration, and we did our due diligence. We did a thorough investigation to see if we could, in fact, connect to Washington Street for vehicular traffic. We found out that although a plan exists on old city plans that would allow for a connection, we have no control over what is a paper street on those old plans. The abutters control it. Public Improvements Commission told us we would need a completely cooperative effort from all abutters here to make that happen, and we haven't gotten a response that other abutters want to do it. So that prohibited us to connecting vehicles with access to Washington Street here. We looked towards the southwest of the site to see if we could connect cars to Washington Street via this route. We are landlocked on this side, though, by all privately owned property, so that prevented us from getting cars out in that direction. So the plan is that cars will enter and exit via the existing Washington Street and Thrush Street. And it's important to note that this area of Willette and Thrush didn't exist about 10, 15 years ago. This is all newer development. When you take a right-hand turn off Maplewood Street here, you're in all private ways. These are all private ways. We're going to build this as a private way up to public standards. And that is the plan as is. Following approval of this board, we need relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals, Public Improvements Commission to build the road, and Concom. A couple other things, bit about my client. My client is CAD Builders, LLC. They're a local company out of Canton with roots in High Park, and again, they've done an awful lot of work in this neighborhood. As we went through the project and we received the supplemental request for information, the project really grew in breadth and scope, and we think it actually improved. We brought on a lead consultant. We are now at lead silver, and we're proud of that fact. We re-engaged Howard Stein Hudson to help with some traffic mitigation on these existing streets of the bird streets. So we're going to work with BTD going forward on any traffic calming measures that we can make in those existing streets. And in addition, we had some great recommendations from BPDA staff who mentioned that although we have an awful lot of open space, we have 66,000 square feet of deed restricted open space, they said it's not that easy to get to. So we've actually created a publicly accessible path right where my cursor is, open to the public, open to neighborhood dog walkers and folks who want to hike through the woods up here. So we're excited about that. We've also, in an effort to encourage healthier lifestyles and encourage people to take public transit, we're going to create a sidewalk that extends to the 4945 Washington Street, which this board approved in the past couple of years and is now under construction. So the plan, when they were approved, was they allow pedestrians to traverse sort of backwards to our site. We're now allowing pedestrians to traverse towards Washington Street to get to the bus easier. Again, we think those are some great improvements made to the site, and we commend BPDA staff for recommending them. That's it for my presentation. I'd like to thank the entire BPDA staff who helped us through this process, especially Ashlyn Kerr, who did an outstanding job as our project manager.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board at this time? Hearing no questions, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item number 29. Request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving the requirement of further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D of the zoning code for the construction of a mixed-use building consisting of 110 rental units, including 18 IDP units, 12,000 square feet of ground floor retail, 104 parking spaces, 110 bicycle storage spaces located at 5 Washington Street, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. The 5 Washington Street site is made up of approximately 43,500 square feet and is primarily located in Brighton, with a small portion located in the town of Brookline. Currently, the site is a gas and service station with approximately 120 vehicles. Over the past 4 years, BPDA staff have been working with multiple proponents on numerous iterations of this project throughout a robust and often very spirited community process. As you may have read in your board memo, the version that will be presented momentarily is a result of a commendable group effort between the proponent, the IAG, BPDA and city staff, and the community. Throughout the Article 80 process, the unit count has been reduced, the IDP component has increased, sidewalk widths have increased, the building's top floor has been set back, the number of 3-bedroom units has increased, even the color of the building has been modified to address the community feedback. In addition, the proponent has worked closely with the IAG, BPDA, and BTD staff over the last few months to develop a thoughtful mitigation package, which is outlined in your board memo. The product of years of dialogue now before you is a 108-unit rental building with 104 parking spaces and approximately 12,500 square feet of retail space, which is anticipated to be a pharmacy and a local retail space on the ground floor. To briefly recap the process for the current proposal, the proponent entered into a 99-year ground lease with the owners of the site in June of 2017. A PNF was submitted to the BPDA on January 12, 2018. A public meeting was held on February 28th, and IAG meetings were held on February 26th and March 28th, where the proposal was presented and discussed. An extended comment period concluded on April 1st. The BPDA subsequently issued a request for supplemental information on April 25th, which requested the proponent address the concerns raised throughout the community process. On May 18th, the proponent filed a supplemental information report. The revised project was then presented at an additional IAG meeting held on June 6th. If approved, the proponent plans to commence construction as soon as March of 2019 with completion at the end of 2020. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Justin Krebs, who will introduce his team and then begin the project presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey, and members of the board. We appreciate your time. My partner, Matt Ferris, Tamara Roy, our architect. I would like to also say Casey did a fabulous job with us, guiding us through this process. The one thing I wanted to say in addition is we are long-term owners, so one of the interesting things and concerns that came up with the community is that although it was not for ownership, that our model and our investors are generational owners, so they do generational skipping trust. So our commitment both to the community and the neighborhood, as we told them, is Matt and I will be there whenever you want to call us if there's an issue. It'll be completely professionally managed, so issues like snow on the sidewalks, Issues as far as responsiveness to the project were key. We actually brought in all loading and all controls. The retail space within the project, which is where the loading would occur, is regulated per a lease, which will require all move-ins as well as all deliveries to be done within our envelope, within our parking garage, that tomorrow will speak further. Those were some real key issues, as well as I think the constructive dialogue that we had with the IAG and the community that gave us the guidance that if we could set back the top floor, reducing the influence and the impact of the massing, that was a real benefit. It's been a great dialogue. We actually enjoyed the process with the IAG, and I think we've landed at a good spot with that. I'll respect your time, and I'll let Tamara go through the details.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dustin. Good evening. Tamara Roy, representing our Stantec architecture team. Very quickly, since Casey covered a lot of this ground, 18 affordable apartments out of the 108, large retail space on the ground floor, and actually an extra one for the local retailers at a discounted rent, and we have quite a few different green features. Sorry. Oh, yes, 16%. It's actually 16.6% is our affordable housing IDP contribution. The site is at this corner of Quarry Road and Washington Street, very transit-oriented development with a 3-minute walk to Commonwealth Avenue Green Line, as well as the Beacon Street T 6 minutes away. It is a gas station site. It has 6 curb cuts in and out. It's not an easy sort of public realm at the moment, and it also floods during rains. So we're going to mitigate that as part of our project. It's going to be a great improvement, really, to the neighborhood. The context is a mix of, on the Boston side, brick, a lot of red brick buildings, taller, ranging from 5 to 10 stories. And then on the left 2 images, it's the Brookline side, because we really straddle the Brookline-Boston line of smaller 2, 3, 4-story apartment buildings. So this is our project, and Casey really ran down all the bullet points on the left, so I'm not going to go and read them again for you, but it's essentially a U-shaped building with the corners dropped down, as Justin mentioned, through the IAG process to make it appear as a 4-story building rather than a 5-story building. The plan is one larger retailer on the corner with parking for them behind, covered, as well as those the loading docks that Justin mentioned, and then that small discounted retail on the front facing the Pocket Park on the Brookline side, hoping that we're going to get somebody really neighborhood friendly there as a gathering place for the neighborhood. And so part of the design revisions through the IAG input these are the design, just design revisions, which is reducing the amount of units, adding the additional affordables, increasing the 3-bedroom family units from 4 to 9 on site, then widening the sidewalks as much as we could along Quarry, and pushing the upper mass back away from Quarry Street, as well as making crosswalk and bike lane improvements, and then lightening that gray volume. That was the color she mentioned. It was a darker gray to start. So this was what we had before. And you can see sort of the red brick elements coming up to the 5th story, whereas we always had the one white brick element being lowered at that major corner. And then where we are now is we've dropped both those brick elements, as well as lightened the gray generally and pushed the entire top bar away from Quarry Road. And then on Quarry Road, there was a concern about that bump that projected out at the top of the screen. So we pushed that back as well to widen the sidewalk to over 10 feet at that point. And then on the Quarry uphill side, this was that other brick volume that went all the way up to 5 stories. And we pushed that back as well. These are not inexpensive changes to a building, because you're adding terraces and waterproofing and changing the units on that floor plan, and our developers were willing to do this for the IAG and the census scale. And there's quite a long list of different monetary contributions to the neighborhood, including the Alston Mobility Study, which was mentioned earlier, both a one-time contribution as well as a 5-year monthly contribution to it as it gets going, as well as a $10,000 contribution to the school across the street, to possibly the library or another location of the IAG's choice, as well as another $5,000 contribution to a park of the IAG's choice. And then beyond that, what we mentioned before, the stormwater remediation, environmental remediation of a former gas station site as to alleviate the flooding issues is over $1 million. There's jobs. We always hear jobs in this meeting. The decrease in the vehicle trips of a gas station to a housing site is important as well. And reducing those curb cuts from 6 to 1 is going to really change this site. And then as Justin started out, and we're sort of circling around, they'll own, operate, and maintain the building for the long term. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any questions from the board? It's a beautiful project, but hearing no questions, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations. Item number 30. Request authorization to approve the transfer of Newcastle Saranac Apartments on parcel 57 and 59 located at 599 Columbus Ave and 380 Northampton Street to Fenway Community Development Corporation and the Shoshet Companies, and to enter into a memorandum of understanding with said new entities and the developer of the anticipated 70 Kilmarnock Street project, and to enter into an affordable rental housing agreement and restrictions, and to take all related actions. Tim.
Thank you, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Secretary Polimis, and members of the board. Thank you for your time on this matter this evening. The Newcastle and Saranac Apartments is a 97-unit project that was renovated and income restricted 40 years ago under the state 13A program. This property is what we would call an expiring use project. When projects such as these expire under federal HUD programs, tenants are given enhanced vouchers that help them to pay the market rent, but as these tenants leave, the units become market rate. For projects such as this one, which was state funded, similar protections do not exist for the tenants, and the restrictions expired on March 1st, 2018, which starts a 3-year period in which rents are raised to market and few tenants would be able to stay. Here's the project location, which is immediately next to the back entrance to the Mass Ave T-stop and on the boundary of the Fenway, South End, and Lower Roxbury neighborhoods. This is a picture of the Newcastle buildings at 599 Columbus Avenue and the Saranac buildings, which also faces Columbus but is at 380 Northampton Street. Today, in an unusual and innovative move, we're asking you to approve the use of IDP off-site units to save these 97 households. IDP funds have been used in the past to purchase and preserve existing housing at the Boston Trailer Park, 104 mobile homes, 69 Walden Street, which is 18 units, and in 2014 at Cortez Street, which was 41 SRO units. Those were used with IDP funds, not off-site units, however. What we're proposing today is that we would use off-site units from the 60 Kilmarnock Street project to initially fund this project. The preservation will occur in 2 steps. Fenway CDC, in cooperation with Shoshet Companies, will purchase the property with a mortgage from the quasi-state agency known as CDAC, and then the project will have approximately 2 years to pull together additional funding sources to complete the renovations, at which time a second closing will occur. In order to secure the loan from CDAC, $6 million in funds were needed to support the project today. We approached developers with existing off-site commitments in the area, but because of their development timelines, they were unable to support the project at this time. The development team, however, approached Cabot & Forbes, or CC&F, and their proposed project at Kilmarnock and Queensberry Street in the Fenway. CC&F is prepared to fund this initial $6 million in exchange for a 22-unit IDP credit for this or another project. As the 60 Kilmarnock project is proposed to have approximately 450 units, this credit only represents a portion of their commitment, and the remaining commitment will be defined as part of the regular Article 80 process, which is about to begin. It is anticipated that the project as a whole will be funded as off-site IDP units, and given that there is a parking lot in the back of the project, there is a proposal to create an additional building at this site which could hold up to 42 income-restricted affordable condos, also created as off-site IDP units. And this is the site of the Newcastle building and the parking lot in the back. As Newcastle Saranac sits on urban renewal parcels, there will be future action by this board in order to subdivide the parcel and so for this additional building, to create a new LDA, to review that affordable condo project, and to review the 60 Kilmarnock Street project. If you have any questions, Jacob Vance from Cabot, Cabinet Forbes and Andre Jones from Fenway CDC are also here.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have any questions on this. I applaud finding this solution, which doesn't seem like it was an easy thing to do. Not really for you to answer, but favor for further analysis later. I'm wondering how many of these are kind of approaching that expiration that we have kind of on the book, and then kind of what's our plan? How can we get in front of that? And kind of, I forget sometimes that like 50 years, well, I don't know. It's going to come up, right? So, again, not for response tonight, but we're curious future to just kind of see that analysis.
I can give you a little bit right now. Under the Housing 2030 plan, we anticipated these expiring use projects, and the goal was to maintain 97% of those units over the 20-year period. We so far have only lost, I think at most, about 20 units over the last 6 years. But it's been through the diligent efforts of the staff at the Department of Neighborhood Development to do that. And this is one of the first times that we're part of that as well.
Well, Tim, I want to congratulate you for, I know it's hard to put these deals together. And I think for all of us, this is a cautionary message in this project because a lot of housing advocates would like us to see us making permanently affordable housing because this problem isn't going away, as Priscilla said. And as we create more, if we have to use new units to save older units, we're actually not creating a new set of units for the market. So this is a complex issue, but I think more of us need to say out loud, let's create permanently affordable housing, and we can do that, legally. We can't do that. The BPDA can't do that by itself now, but we can do that through legislative channels, and I think it's something we should all be thinking about and working towards.
I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions from the board, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Good job, Tim. Item number 31, request authorization to execute an amendment to the land disposition agreement with the Islamic Society of Boston Trust, extending the Phase 2 commencement date and to amend the Phase 1 and Phase 2 descriptions. Gary.
Thank you. Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. The current project site is referred to as Parcel R14 of the Campus High School Urban Renewal Area and located at the corner of King Street, Malcolm X Boulevard, and Elmwood Street in Roxbury. In May 2003, a land disposition agreement was entered into by the BRA and the Islamic Society of Boston Trust following BRA board authorization in January 2000 to construct Phase 1 of the project, which consisted of a mosque and community center that would include function rooms, administrative offices, a library, and approximately 105 parking spaces. Phase 2 of the project was to include a school and ancillary housing. It was originally anticipated that the construction of Phase 2 of the project would be constructed within 3 years from the initial date of the Certificate of Occupancy for Phase 1, which was issued in 2008. In August 2013 and in December 2016, the BRA authorized amendments to the LDA, resulting in extensions to the commencement date for Phase 2 to no later than December 31st, 2019. The Islamic Society of Boston Trust is still raising money for the construction of Phase 2 of the project and is seeking an extension to the commencement date for Phase 2 to no later than July 31st, 2038. It is recommended that the BPDA authorize the director to execute an amendment to the land disposition agreement to extend the commencement date for Phase 2 to no later than July 31st, 2038, and amend the descriptions of Phase 1 and Phase 2, specifically that the housing component in Phase 2 be for persons and their families employed at the mosque, cultural center, or any school operated on the property, or attending or enrolled in any school operated on the property, including the imam and his family, any caretaker of the property, any visiting scholars and researchers, and for families of children while those children are receiving medical attention at Boston area hospitals. Take questions.
Thank you, Gary. Are there any questions from the board?
I'm curious about the date of 2038. I mean, we rarely approve things that are so far in the future. I'm just wondering what is that about?
Okay, yeah, I knew this would come up. Hi, Janet Carlson. So what happens is, under Islamic law, they cannot borrow money. They have to raise all of their money. So it takes them forever. So they have to raise, in addition to doing repairs on their other property, they're trying to raise it for phase 2. They can't pay interest on money, so therefore cannot borrow. And it takes forever to raise money for them.
I see.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Gary. Item number 32. Request authorization to adopt a minor modification regarding parcels R17B, R17C, R17D, and R17E at Malcolm X Boulevard, Putnam Place, and Roxbury Street to allow the acquisition of said parcels, set the permitted land use as residential and/or commercial and accessory parking to set the land use building requirements, to accept title to said parcels, and to take all related actions. Ray and Courtney.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you, Chairman Burke, members of the board. My name is Courtney Sharp. I'm a senior planner, and the intention of my remarks today is to give an overview for board items 32, 33, and 34, leading into Ray's presentation of the request for minor modifications to urban renewal. So as you may be aware, in 2004, the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan was released. And out of that process, there was the creation of the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee. And since then, they have had monthly meetings. And in 2016, we began, in collaboration with that committee, the release or the beginning of the Plan Dudley Square initiative. And so that has been envisioned as the implementation of that document. And the goals of it focus on creating a wider diversity of housing stock within the neighborhood. There has been a high concentration of income restricted units. And so part of the plan wanted to see a more diverse range of housing options. Another focus of the plan itself was to create more economic development within the area. So in 2016, we began this process, Plan Dudley Square, to put back into public use a lot of property, real estate that was publicly held by the BRA, the city, and the state. So what we have on this map, the dark blue parcels are the ones that are being conceived of in Plan Dudley Square. And the light blue parcels are ones that are already tentatively designated under construction. And as you are all aware, this is parcel P3. So this is here for context. So what is being discussed in items 32, 33, and 34 are these sites. This is Crescent parcel. This is a Dudley commercial site. And then these are parcels A and B. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ray.
Okay, thank you, Courtney.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I can do, these votes are all very similar, so if you'd like, I can kind of, would you rather do each one, or can I kind of give an overview?
To read each one, so
oh,
I
okay.
think we need a separate vote for each one.
Okay, so we may as well do it that way. Just want to give you the...
I believe, Renee, can I do one vote for all three, or?
Oh, okay, yeah, whatever, whatever it's...
We'll do each one separately.
Okay, Yeah, that's totally fine. So we're requesting that the board approve minor modifications to the Campus High School Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R129, for parcels 17, R17B, R17C, R17D, and R17E that make up the site known as the Parcel AB site that Courtney pointed out on that larger map. Here it is, a more up-close view of Parcel AB. It's a cluster of vacant land parcels of approximately 27,773 square feet, and it contains the BPDA parcel known as Unnumbered Malcolm X Boulevard, along with 3 D&D owned parcels known as Unnumbered Putnam Place, 2 Putnam Place, and 120 Roxbury Street. The 120 Roxbury Street parcel is located across the private way of Putnam Place from the remaining contiguous parcels. In order to be consistent with the RFP development guidelines that were crafted through the planned Dudley Square process that Courtney just described to you, minor modifications to the urban renewal plan are necessary in order to identify these parcels as parcels to be acquired in the cases of those parcels that the BPDA does not own, set the permitted land uses and building requirements as residential and or commercial and accessory parking, which goes along with uses that the community is in favor of, and set the maximum floor area ratio as 4.0. These modifications are consistent with the objectives of the community process and the urban renewal plans in their current forms, and they do not substantially or materially alter or change the urban renewal plans. They are, however, necessary to effectuate the development of this site in a manner that is consistent with the community process. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board?
Could you point to where if I'm reading this correctly, where the post office is?
So the post office is, I believe, down to the left.
Left or the right?
Across the street. Across the street and down.
To the right.
Oh, okay. Is this pointer? Whoops. Uh-oh. I was trying to find the pointer.
It's at the top.
Oh, it's at the top. Okay. Oh, right there. So it's like, it's not working. Oh, yeah, we could probably show it better from the previous slide.
From this one? So this is the parcels that we were talking about, A and B, and so the post office is more like over here.
This is adjacent to the Fairfield building, the Fairfield site on Malcolm X Boulevard.
Which is actually just
And where's the high school?
sorry. So from here, the high school, here at the corner, well, the combination of them.
And that's P3. So the parcels we're talking about, right, and the bowling building on there is where?
Here, well, here in the middle. So,
Okay.
Okay, are there any further questions on this? No further questions, and a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, that's item number 30.
Okay.
We'll go to item number 32. Request authorization to adopt a minor modification regarding parcels R17B, R17C, R17D, and R17E at Malcolm X Boulevard, Putnam Place, and Roxbury Street to allow the acquisition of said parcels.
That's the one that that's the one we just did. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so now we're on 33, number 33.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Request authorization, number 33, request authorization to adopt a minor modification regarding parcels X-35 and X-35-1 located on Tremont Street and being a portion of the Crescent parcel to allow the acquisition of said parcels and to set the permitted land uses as school, residential, and commercial use, and to adopt a minor modification regarding parcels X-30A, X-30A1, X-30B, X-30C, and X-30D, located at Molina Cast Boulevard and Tremont Streets, and being a portion of the Crescent Building, to allow the acquisition of said parcels and set the permitted land uses as school, residential, and/or commercial uses, and to accept title to said parcels and to take all related actions. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. This is the Crescent site. It's known as the Crescent site, and we're requesting that the board approve minor modifications to both the South End and Campus High School urban renewal plans for this site, because this site actually sits in both urban renewal areas. So it consists of contiguous parcels, some of which are in one and some of which are in the other. And the sites that make up the South End urban renewal area, project number Mass R56, are parcels X-30A, X-30-A-1, X-30B, X-30C, and X-30D. The Campus High School urban renewal parcels, project number Mass R-29, are parcels X-31 and X-31-1. So the site is approximately 78,520 square feet. It contains 2 BPDA-owned parcels with street addresses of 1130 Tremont Street and 175 to 177 Ruggles Street. It has 5 city-owned parcels with addresses of unnumbered Tremont Street, unnumbered Melniakas Boulevard, and unnumbered Francis de Sales Court, as well as 1 parcel that's owned by MassDOT, Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and that has a street address of unnumbered Melniakas Boulevard. BPDA Legal is currently engaged in title work to verify ownership of all of these parcels. So again, same situation. In order to be consistent with the development guidelines that were crafted through the planned Dudley Square process, we need to seek minor modifications to the urban renewal plans in order to first identify these parcels as parcels to be acquired by BPDA, because we'll be issuing the RFP in the cases of those parcels that are not currently in our ownership. Set the proposed land use as school, residential, and/or commercial, and ensure that the planning and design restrictions for these parcels shall be as approved by the BRA. And again, these modifications are consistent with the objectives of the community process and the urban renewal plans in their current forms, and they do not substantially or materially alter or change the urban renewal plans. They are, however, necessary to effectuate the development of the Crescent site in a manner that is consistent with the planned Dudley Square process. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question. Who owns that church, and is it a protected church? Is it a nationally historic building?
I don't know if it's a protected historic building. I believe is it a Catholic church? I think, yeah. We can certainly find that out for you.
I'm just curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a request more than a question, and that is that given the volume of approvals we're being asked to consider in this immediate area, and the approvals that we've granted, I'd say over the last 2 or 3 meetings, which have covered significant parts of Dudley Square, and given that we now have 3-dimensional digital capabilities in terms of our mapping and the like, I think it would be helpful for us as we move forward to use some of those for a presentation that would give us an overview of the immediate neighborhood and the actions that are now ongoing or proposed for that area, so that we can begin to consolidate our thinking about traffic, shadow impacts, construction impacts, and a range of other things. And I think it's easier for us to do that now than it would have been even a couple of months ago. And I say that because I feel as though I know this neighborhood quite well. I'm through there a lot, but I'm finding it a little bit difficult to orient myself just on the basis of these 2-dimensional maps with overlays. And I think it is time, even though the planning is still going on, for us to get an overall sense, for example, of how the hotel on Cass Boulevard relates to the tropical foods development, to the housing that we approved earlier in this meeting, to a matter that was removed from the agenda for today's meeting, to the consolidation of these parcels. I mean, there's a lot going on in an area that is no more than, 3 or 4 blocks, really. And I think it would be helpful if we could get an overview of all of that.
Yeah, we can certainly talk to our urban design staff and work on something like that, just to, I'm sure it would be a great help to everybody.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll go to item number 34, which is still part of this project. Item number 34, requests authorization to adopt a minor modification creating parcels G1A, G1A2, G1A3A, I1A and I1B located at Washington Street, and to set the permitted uses as residential, commercial, and parking uses, and setting the land use and building requirements in connection with the Dudley commercial site. Ray.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. This is the third minor modification that we're requesting, and this is to the Washington Park Urban Renewal Plan for parcels that make up the site known as Dudley Commercial. These are site names that we'll be using in our upcoming RFP documents that get issued as a result of the Plan Dudley Square process. And again, we have different work to do on these different sites in terms of legal work and things like that, so they won't all be coming out at the same time, but we're sort of getting our preliminary kind of homework done on these, so that's why we're doing these minor modifications all together right now. So the Dudley commercial site consists of approximately 125,212 square feet of vacant land that's owned by the City of Boston Department of Neighborhood Development. It's located at 135 Dudley Street, adjacent to the new Dudley Square B2 police station at 2400 Washington Street. D&D originally acquired the land from the BRA, so as such it remains subject to several land disposition agreements, and it's still subject to the Washington Park Urban Renewal Plan. So again, in order to be consistent with the RFP development guidelines that are being crafted through the Plan Dudley Square process, we need minor modifications to this urban renewal plan in order to identify these parcels on map 2 of the plan, designate their land uses as residential, commercial, and parking, and set the maximum permitted height as 150 feet and the FAR as 3.0. These modifications are consistent, again, with the objectives of the community process and the urban renewal plans in their current form. They do not substantially or materially alter or change the urban renewal plans. They are, however, necessary to effectuate the development of the site in a manner that's consistent with the community process. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, and motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 35, Charlestown. Request authorization to approve the transfer of parcel R6A located at 60 Chappie Street from Kathleen Murray as trustee of Kathleen Murray Home Trust to 60 Chappie Street LLC, and to subdivide said parcel, to enter into an agreement to terminate land disposition agreement and enter into 2 new land disposition agreements allowing construction of a new single-family house and the construction of 3 condominium townhouses. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polimis, and Director Golden. My name is Michael Sinatra, project manager for this project. The project before you this evening is parcel R-6A in the Charlestown urban renewal area, also identified as 60 Chappie Street. The site currently consists of a single-family home that was built after the parcel was purchased from the BRA by Robert and Kathleen Murray on October 3, 1978. On December 1, 2005, Kathleen Murray, the surviving spouse of Robert Murray, transferred parcel R-6A and the single-family house to Kathleen Murray as trustee of the Kathleen Murray Home Trust. We are before you tonight to request a transfer of this single-family home from the Kathleen Murray Home Trust to 60 Chappie Street LLC, whose members consist of Jonathan Heelan and Jesse McDonald. The proposal is to demolish the current single-family home and construct a new single-family home on a portion of parcel R-6A, along with 3 condominium townhouses on the Medford Street portion of parcel R-6A. The BRA has also established an incremental price of $15,000 for each of the 3 condos for a total of $45,000. In addition, the BRA will require that 4% of the gross will be due for each unit after the initial sale, with a 2% total of gross to be paid to the BRA for every sale thereafter. The development team held an abutters meeting sponsored by the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services on March 19, 2018, where they received strong support for the project. They also received a strong vote of support from the Charlestown Neighborhood Council on April 3, 2018. In addition, we held a BPDA-sponsored meeting on May 31, 2018, in which every attendee voiced their strong support for the project as well. We are seeking your approval of the sale and the subdivision. We are also seeking your approval to terminate the original LDA and to enter into 2 new LDAs, allowing for the construction of the single-family home, as well as the 3 condominium townhouses, each on a portion of parcel R-6A. If I could direct your attention to the screen really quick, I just have 3 slides for context. This would be the 3 townhouses on the Medford Street portion of the parcel. This would be the newly reconstructed single-family home on Chappie with the side elevation, obviously, of the Medford Street portion. And this is existing conditions. The left being the current single-family home, and the right being the portion on Medford Street that will have the 3 townhouses on it. If you have any further questions, Janet Carlson from the BPDA legal team is present this evening, as well as members from the development team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. We're going to move to item number 40. Request authorization to expend $50,000 to the Harry McDonough Sailing Program and to enter into a grant agreement. Aisling.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. On May 5th, 2014, the BRA board first voted to approve the Parcel K project for several parcels that together comprise what was formerly known as the Massachusetts Port Authority Commonwealth Flats development areas. Several notices of project change followed the original approval, the most recent of which was approved by this board on December 15th, 2016. In accordance with this project's executed cooperation agreement, the proponents have committed to monetary contributions for community-directed purposes. It was important throughout the Article 80 review process to members of the Impact Advisory Group and of the public that this contribution be used for community-based organizations in the South Boston neighborhood. The Harry McDonough Sailing Center has been operating from Castle Island in the city's South Boston neighborhood since 1972, with a mission of providing free sailing instruction programs for children. More than 650 children, ages 8 through 16, from across the city of Boston, and of all economic and ethnic backgrounds, attend the program annually in the summer months. The program also employs 16 high school and college-age students, all of whom are graduates of the youth sailing program. Recent storms and floods have inflicted substantial damage on the Harry McDonough Sailing Center facilities. Immediate renovations and improvements are necessary in order for the center to continue to serve the youth of the city of Boston. This grant disbursement requests the board's authorization for $50,000 of the monetary contributions from the Parcel K project to be directed towards the Harry McDonough Sailing Center for necessary renovations and programming essential to the center's continued offerings. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 41. Request authorization to amend the May 12, 2016 vote establishing the Other Post-Employment Benefits Liability Trust Fund and to establish said trust fund as irrevocable and to approve a longer-term goal to fully fund the OPED liability totaling approximately $20 million. Teresa, this sounds perfectly clear.
Exactly. I'm really earning my acting director of finance salary this evening. I am here this evening to ask your approval to convert our Other Post-Employment Benefits, or OPEB, liability trust fund into an irrevocable trust fund known as a qualifying trust. This conversion would protect the funds from being seized as a result of a suit. Additionally, as a qualifying trust, the accounting treatment for future cost calculations are favorable. A qualifying trust measures future returns on market conditions, which currently is approximately 7.5%, while the non-qualifying plan calculation is based on the municipal bond rate, which currently is right now 4%. Therefore, we ask for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Item number 42. Request approval for the Boston Redevelopment Authority's fiscal year 2019 operating budget and to take all related actions.
So Michelle's budget earlier this evening covered the BRA portion of the budget, so unless you have any questions.
Okay, are
we
there any
seek your
questions from the
approval.
board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 43, contractual. We need a motion to pay the bills.
I move that we pay our bills.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Item number 44, personnel. Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a few items for your consideration on the BRA agenda this evening. We have one appointment for your consideration with details listed in the board memo. Lauren Shortliff, Deputy Director of Downtown and Neighborhood Planning in the Planning Department. We have 5 travel items for your consideration with details listed in the board memos. Carolyn Bennett, Ala Ziskin, and Jeffrey Curtis from MIS. David Carlson from Urban Design, and Renee Lefebvre from General Counsel. We have one departure with the details listed in the board memo, Mary Beth Piles from General Counsel. We have one policy and procedures item for your consideration. This is for the adoption of the revised compensation structure policy. And we have one administrative item for your consideration with details listed in the board memo. And it's the appointment of Michael Christopher as the acting director for signatures in the absence of the director.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And finally, the director's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. Tonight, quickly, the votes you've taken have yielded approvals for almost 1 million square feet of new construction. That speaks to 700 new construction jobs and more than 2,000 direct and indirect non-construction jobs. So another night of significant development approval activity. But I'd like to focus on a few things that other departments within the agency have been working on beyond development review. This week we unveiled and released Boston's Economy 2018. It's our annual report from our research division, which has once again done a terrific job of explaining just what's going on in this very robust economy of 2018 in the city of Boston. It discusses employment, our low unemployment rate relative to the rest of the state, relative to the rest of the nation, the quality of the jobs, the places where the jobs are growing. There's significant job growth annually in Boston, but it really drills down on the sectors that help tell the story of what's going on with our building boom. The building boom, after all, is a reflection of a demographic and economic boom. This tells the story pretty comprehensively, but easily digestible. It's written for the layman. It's not a textbook of economics, but it tells the story by the numbers with regard to Boston's very healthy economy right now. So I have a copy for you each, and for anyone watching at home, it's available on our website. A few days ago, the Boston Globe and other news outlets told the story of some of our significant new planning efforts. Once again, the mayor wants us to keep up the hard charge with regard to not only reviewing and permitting major real estate development, but also doing the planning that allows us to achieve greater community support when development projects do come along. So we've done several. We just saw a presentation on some of the culminating events with regard to Plan Dudley that Courtney provided you tonight. But a few days ago, we publicly announced, the mayor publicly announced that we'll do a planning study in Newmarket, in Mattapan, in East Boston, in the downtown area, and we'll do a mobility study that covers and looks at much of Alston Brighton, which is another one of the neighborhoods that has one of the strongest development climates right now, and just as everywhere there is significant development, traffic impacts are a key concern. So we're going to drill down in Alston Brighton on traffic and mobility, and we've commissioned a major study to help us advance that effort. So planning is occupying a lot of the agency's attention, and will continue to do so far into the future, because that's the way we want it, that's the way the mayor wants it. We think that ultimately serves the best interests of the people of Boston. Finally, you heard a discussion tonight on Manuel Esquivel and Tad Reed have been working for quite a long period of time on a smart utilities pilot. We've adopted that. We'll move forward. I want to reiterate a really important point. This policy really puts us as one of a kind. We're the first in the nation to adopt something that provides meaningful resiliency in our planning associated with public utility infrastructure. It'll be resilient, it'll be more efficient, it'll be coordinated both among utilities and public agencies, so that we're not doing redundant, disruptive efforts over and over again with regard to ripping up streets for purposes of laying down wire and pipe. So this brings us to a new level that we really don't have peers in. This effort really paves the way for improved management of utilities, but not only with regard to quality of life and disruption, it improves efficiency. Again, all that is done by utilities over and over again, the redundancy is embedded in everybody's rates. So the more we can reduce the utility infrastructure costs of utilities, the more we can reduce bills that ultimately flow to consumers. But very key concept here too is resiliency, protecting this infrastructure against any kind of inclement weather or climate event. So this is forward-thinking planning policy at a granular level. We're going to see it actually have concrete effects in the built environment, and we're going to see how this works for the next 2 years and hopefully build on it once we prove the concept. So with that, I thank you for your attention and have a great night.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. We need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, meeting adjourned.